Welcome back to another episode on the podcast. This one, as you can tell, is going to be a really long one. So I'm not going to take up too much space in this introduction. But this episode is packed, and it is one that you can revisit over and over and over as you go this year. And I was going to create just a solo January transit update, but we were so in depth about every single month this year. So I figured I would release this as your January 2026 transit update. We go through human design transits, astrology transits. There is so much gold in this episode. So I really can't wait for you to listen to it. There was a term that there was a term in here that I was trying to remember that Chris Brennan had said during the astrology podcast, and it was just reality distortion. So as Saturn and Neptune move into Aries together, we talk about it. It creates this reality distortion, right? And so that's the word that I keep trying to remember as we're going through this episode. But again, it is so good. 2026 is not going to be an easy year. And I know I've talked about it. I think as a Leo rising, I'm super excited about like all the fire sign energy. I feel like 2025 definitely stripped me. And I think the more challenging that 2025 was for you, maybe the more I don't want to say the more optimistic, because we should all be optimistic in every sense of the word, right? And whatever you're moving through, whatever you're struggling with, right? We can always find gratitude for something and find optimism held within that, because it's always for our best good, right? It's happening for us, not to us. So, but I do think that the more that was stripped from you during 2025, the more we're given the opportunity to rebuild and timeline jump in 2026 as we're moving on forward past 2026 and beyond, right? There's so much going on. The really big activator, I believe, of 2026 is this mini triangle that's happening with Neptune, Pluto, and Uranus. Uranus is a big player this next year. So again, this is the great awakener. This is in Gemini, transforming the way that we perceive things, the way that we think about things, the way that we see things. And it's changing in a way that we can't go back. Once we see it, we can't unsee it, right? And we are all on our own timeline, doing our own thing, exactly where we need to be, learning what we need to be learning. So again, like at the end of this whole episode, we say that like, regardless of what happens or doesn't happen this year, regardless of how far you've come, or maybe you feel like you were stuck and you didn't progress, like there was always going to be another opportunity. But just remember that the opportunity to change, to choose, to do something different is always now. It's not tomorrow. It's not the next day. It's not next week. It's not next month. It's now. So if you're listening to this in early January 2026, just know that you can choose now. Like there's no need to wait until July when everything gets crazy, or like whatever it is. And again, also, use discernment, use your own judgment, and know that, again, these are collective, big picture energetic transits. So your chart and the way you experience it is going to look different than the way that I experience it, or Sheena experiences it, or Crystal experiences it, or your mom experiences it, right? We're all energetically have our own unique fingerprint. And also don't forget that we're all connected, right? So there's a mirror within all of this. So I'm going to leave it there. Enjoy this episode. Again, save this episode, share it with a friend, come back to it. This is one that you can continually come back to, because again, we go through every single month. So if you want February update, you want a March update, you're in July and you're like, oh yeah, that episode, like come back to it, because it is so packed. It is so good. There is so much gold in here. Like I literally cannot wait for you to listen to it. So let me know what you think, what you got out of it on Instagram, TikTok at Rochelle.Christiane, basically everywhere, ROCHELLE.CHRISTIANE. If you want to come along for the ride and really understand how these transits will specifically impact you in your chart, Astro Design School starts January 21st. So this is a year-long program where we're diving deeply into how these will impact you on an individual level. And you're going to have somatic practices. We're doing lunar cycle calls, like all the thing. You're going to be really getting deeply intimate with yourself and your chart. And if you want a one-on-one session to just understand on a big picture how this impacts you in your chart, you can book a one-on-one session. Everything you need to know is down in the show notes. Follow me on Substack. Again, share with a friend if you gain value from this. Leave a review. It really is helpful. Like Spotify, it's just those 5 stars. You don't even have to type anything. You can just click it and leave it. And it really, really does help the podcast. So I thank you so much for listening. This one is a long one. So I'm going to leave you here and I will catch you on the other side.
Hey, friends, welcome back to an episode of the Lifestyle of the Weird and Interesting podcast and Rochelle's podcast, Emotional Mastery. We're here together. We're so excited to talk about all of the transits for 2026, give you guys some highlights, things to look forward to, things to be aware of, and talk through month by month what this is going to look like. So welcome back to the podcast, Rochelle. We haven't had you on for a minute, but I'm so excited about this.
Thank you so much. It's actually the Rochelle Christian podcast now. We rebranded this year.
Oh, I didn't know that. So, okay. Yes. I should have asked you before we started.
Yeah. It's fine. It's been that for years. And this year, like literally Uranus was moving over my son and I was like, I'm burning it all down. We're switching it all up. So it's now the Rochelle Christian podcast.
Okay. Well, now we're here together to go over all of these podcasts, all of these notes, all of these transits. So for January, starting out, this is going to come out the first week of January for us, but possibly earlier for you. So what are some of the things that you're noticing in January of 2026 for transits?
Yeah. Well, there's three things that really stand out to me. The first one, we've been talking about it for a while. I feel like this Neptune Saturn conjunction in Aries. So Neptune is moving back into Aries January 26th. So that's like kind of starting this energy that's really going to hit its peak in February. So that's one of the big ones that's happening. And then we're having this stellium in Capricorn with Mars, Venus, and the sun. And so we're going to, during the full moon on the 3rd, the full moon in Cancer, it's going to be opposite this energy. And I just feel like a lot of this is like, I don't know, the word practical keeps coming to me, right? Like with Capricorn, it's really grounded, it's really solid. But then, you know, when we have like Mars and Venus in any sort of aspect to each other, it's always going to bring this energy of like magnetism, attraction, sexuality, right? The masculine, the feminine. But of course, I feel like with Capricorn, it's always like, it's got that staying power, right? So there's some, you know, in certain signs, it could be and heavy kind of energy. It doesn't feel like that. This is really just like really solid, really like, you know, I've been saying for all of like 2025, get so clear on your values, because especially as we move into 2026, like if you don't know what you stand for, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there right now. And especially there's certain transits that we'll get to that can make things even more confusing. So I just feel like it's so important to really anchor into that. And I feel like that will be like a theme of this energy. And then the other big one that is happening, I don't know if it's like big, but Chiron stationing direct in Aries. And that's kind of moving us now towards Chiron's going to shift later in the year and then move back into Aries. So I feel like really paying attention now to what's happening with Chiron, you know, as our wounded healer, the themes that are coming up collectively, as far as, you know, that like self-assertion, self-leadership, I am sort of energy. Those are kind of like the big ones that I'm seeing. How about you?
Yeah, I love that. I love the call out to Chiron specifically because it's something that I focus a lot on when I'm looking at transits, just because I have a Yod and it's the apex point of my Yod. So anytime there's like a Chiron transit of any time, it feels like it sort of like sets my life on fire. So it's always really interesting to see how that shows up for other people too, because of course, like everyone has this in their chart. And anytime that Chiron switches directions, you know, goes retrograde or stations direct, changes signs, any of those things, like you're going to feel that, but it's sort of, I see it as more of like an undercurrent. So the surface of the water is like your traditional everyday personal planet transit, right? And then deep in this undercurrent buried down below where the anchor rests, this is where I see Chiron. So when Chiron kind of makes those shifts, we feel it, but we don't always have the awareness that that's what we're feeling. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to explain what a Yod is for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, sure. Yods are really interesting. I was telling Rochelle and Crystal before we started recording that I'm obsessed with them. Like having one myself was really interesting to learn, but then every person that I connect really deeply with also has this configuration in their chart. So basically what makes up a Yod is that you have these two points that are, I believe they're 150 degrees from each other. And they create a configuration in the chart. So there's what's called an anchor point. I'm trying to like without having a visual and trying to visualize it enough to like explain it. But usually I'm going to butcher this. It's called a quincunx is the shape that it's making. So it's a really narrow shape at the base and then 150 degrees to the apex where the other piece is resting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of looks like, I don't know, like
it looks like an arrow on a compass.
Yeah.
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 Like half of an arrow on a compass is what it looks like to me. It's like a really tight triangle.
Yeah.
And this configuration there's basically, the reason I keep calling them anchor points is that these two anchor points are like the main energies that balance out the point position of the yod. So when you're looking at something like that, you want to look to those anchor points for how to stabilize the energy of whatever the apex point is. And the apex point is just the pointy end, like where it's pointing to. So in Hebrew, the word yod refers to the finger of God. And this is why I think it's so profound. Like I can't talk about it and not get goosebumps. It's awesome. So it's basically like a really unique energy that you come into this world with that it's sort of like it's a fated direction. I hate the word fated for this because it's so much bigger than that, but that's such a simple word that I feel like everybody has access to. Like we all have some sort of understanding at a base level of like what that means, but it is so much deeper than that. So if you do have this configuration in your chart, it's probably really important to learn what those anchor points are, because that apex point is a huge deal and it will continue to show up and continue to pressure you and push you in a direction that feels like there's an outside source that's pushing you towards something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't have one in my chart. I think the closest that I can relate to is my T-square, because there's always this, they call it the karmic point of like that fourth point that I don't have, right? So there's 3 planets in square to each other, and then there's one that's missing, right? And so it feels like that phantom like energy for me, it's always like pulling me, and I know it's different, but that's the closest way that I can relate to it, just because like I don't specifically have it or fully understand. I like, I think it was you and Rachel who kind of brought up the Yods to me, and then I was like, oh, that's interesting, and I know that you're really into it. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, Yods are super fascinating. I always look for them. Rachel was like, how do you spot them so quickly? I'm like, I just literally, that's what I'm looking for. The first thing I look for in somebody's chart.
I literally, because you had said the
Yod.
Yods, and I went and looked, and same thing. Yeah, I'm like, I had like had to Google. I'm like, how do I point it out? Like, I know like what it is, right? But then I'm like, yeah, it's interesting.
We literally discovered that I had one yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Because I didn't think I had one, and Sheena was like, "You have one." I was like, and she's like, "Well, it's because I didn't put rising sign in there, so mine is connected with my rising sign, which is interesting."
Well, unfortunately, Crystal was my guinea pig. When I started like diving into astrology and all the things, Crystal was one of the first people that like I put her chart in, and I didn't know what to look for. And then I learned about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to look for this for everyone. But I don't revisit her chart very often.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those things that yesterday I was like, we need to look, because you seem like you probably would have one. And also we were looking at like Leo and Aquarius because we have the eclipses coming up anyway. So this is a long tangent, but if you're familiar with our podcast, you'll know
we love a good tangent. We tangent often.
They're the best.
Yes. But it's so funny that you said that, oh, like the people in my life usually have Yods, and we found mine. So
that's amazing.
Love that.
I would be curious because I never looked at like points. I never looked at like my IC, MC, like any of that. So I would be curious if I had one like including those points. I don't know.
Yeah. We should look. We should look at it and see. That would be a fun experiment.
We should. Yeah. So stay tuned. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe. Yes. So for January, some of the things that I have, including Chiron moving, are the Cancer full moon. This is calling a lot of things from us. So yes, like as you mentioned, we have the Mercury and Venus in Capricorn, which is going to feel really interesting, I think. unless you have some pretty strong Capricorn placements, because these are really personal planets, right? And they're together. So we have this really interesting balance of like the masculine and feminine happening right now. And the Cancer moon being opposite of that, this is calling us to illuminate the things that might feel a little bit uncomfortable. And being in Cancer, this is also illuminating your childhood, your home, the place that you grew up, the place that you are choosing to call home now, family dynamics, all kinds of other things that are tied to Cancer and the moon, like the emotional world. Cancer moon is very much at home where it is, but Mercury and Venus being opposite to that is going to create like some really interesting dynamics in the transit for sure.
Yeah. And I think another theme with Cancer moon too is about belonging, right? It's like, where do you feel like you belong now? I know that a lot of those themes have been coming up recently of just like, what's serving me? Where do I want to be? Where do I want to put myself in, you know? So I think those are two going to come up big time.
Yeah, I think so too. There's also some long-term structures and how we view like friendship or partnership, or another word that comes up really often with this is like an alliance. So it might not even be like a deep friendship. It might just be somebody that you're close to at work. All of these things are going to be coming up to the surface because of this balance between these two opposite things that are happening. So just watch for that as it comes up. And then Neptune, when it stations direct at 0 degrees of Aries, this is like an initiation. This is coming in and showing us like it's time to be brave. We're going to have to be like really courageous multiple times, as we'll talk about throughout this year. And it's kind of like intuition showing up and then pushing us into a courageous space. And if you haven't been doing this work over the last year, this is going to be really uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that also, you know, one like I guess phrase that always comes to me with this is like the spiritual warrior. And this again, I think comes back to getting really clear on your values, because especially as like Saturn moves in, and I can't remember exactly, Chris Brennan uses a term with like these two together, but it's like it kind of like a delusion, right? Like there is a sense of like uncertainty, and especially, you know, with Neptune and spirituality. And this is also in gate 25, and it's going to be in gate 25 all of the year, which is the gate of the spirit of the self. It's all about innocence, like actually like truly like love and things like that. And so I think like with this, if we're not really clear, it's easy. I do think too, there will be like cult and like religious fanatics and things like that coming out, because again, if we're not rooted in ourself, it's going to be really easy to get distracted. Like, what are we actually fighting for? What do we believe in? What are we moving towards? So just be really discerning, especially with everything, you know, in Aquarius. And, you know, the shadow side of Pluto and Aquarius is controlled by technology. And even if you go on Instagram right now, I'm like, I can't even watch reels anymore, because I'm like, I don't even know what's real. Like literally, it's like there's so much, again, smoke and mirrors. And I think that's going to be coming out a lot with this as well. And so just really being discerning and having that anchor point, I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, for sure. That's some of the stuff that I had seen as well, was just there's a lot of like disillusionment that's coming up throughout a lot of these transits that are happening, especially through like the mid part of the year. There's quite a bit of that shows up, and then toward the end of the year as well. So there's a lot that's happening there. And I love that you mentioned what Chris Brennan talks about for this, because I was watching their podcast the other day and I was like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, I started watching the Leo portion of it. Do you remember the term that he used? Because I meant to write it down. I totally forgot, but it was something like, I can't remember what it was, but it was such a good term.
Remember. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll remember at some point. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also have the new moon
notes.
in Capricorn. Yeah, put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have the new moon in Capricorn that's going to be on the 18th. And we've had every new moon since the Libra new moon at 28 degrees, which I think is really interesting, right? It's this endings. Like I think for all of 2025, we've really been talking about endings and stripping and shedding and all these things. And so this one, and then the Pisces new moon is at 28 degrees, and then we go back, well, that it'll be different degrees. I think the Aries one is at 27. But I think this like 28 degree point is really significant in this just like closing of cycles. And so yeah, the new moon in Capricorn is going to be at that and gate 60. And so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting because if you're into Sabian symbols or you understand them, you'll know this already. And apologies, like if this is sort of redundant, but for those who don't know, Sabian symbols are another element of astrology. And when you're looking at them, something that shows up at 28 degrees plus like whatever minutes, you round that up to 29 degrees, which is the anorectic degree. It's the last degree before it moves into the next sign. There's a lot of nuance to that, but everything in the last year, you know, all of those new moons kind of starting there, we're sort of planting the seeds for the way things are going to wrap up, right? Like that's what a lot of repetition was happening in 2025. I don't know that we really talked about that much on our podcast, but it is a really interesting reflection to look back at and be like, oh yeah, like I can see the signature of that, like carrying over from like, you know, month to month to month as we go through this, and seeing that, you know, we are sort of energetically like wrapping these things up, even having that hallmark show up in astrology.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. So, was there anything else for January that you wanted to touch on?
I'm just looking at my notes. So the full moon in Cancer is really interesting. This one's happening at 13 degrees. This is gate 19. And gate 19
30,
is provocation.
39.
Is it?
Gate 39. Gate 39. Gate of provocation.
Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. I put 19, but I put the right name for it. Anyway, it's happening in gate 39. Sorry for that. It's provocation. And this gate, this is a projector gate, right? So this is, which sounds like, it sounds like Watergate, but for projectors.
Oh my
like
gosh,
the
that's
worst way to classify it, but it's a gate of projection. So provocation is one of my favorite gates in human design because it's here to like elicit things from people. It's sort of like, it's provocative in how it does it. It makes you think about things. And it's,
do you have this gate?
No, I don't have it.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. It is really interesting to me though, because it's not direct in how it does this, right? It's sort of like peeking around a corner and like making a sound and then retreating, and you're like, what is that sound? And now you're on this mission to go seek it. It's sort of like, again, like the word fate is really interesting here because it's sort of like it pulls you in unexpectedly. So watch for that, you know, like with this full moon, when it shows up, what kinds of things like that are showing up in your life, because it is in this gate of provocation. And the thing that's really interesting about that is that it's here provoking emotional wisdom. And it's trying to pull all of like the residual stuff from the masculine feminine balance that's happening at the opposite side of the chart. And it's pulling all of that into your awareness and shining a light on it. And now, you know, like what are the last few things that we can go through and kind of clean up around that? What are some of the emotional intelligences around that? What are, you know, some of those themes that are showing up? Where does safety come from? That's another one that's really big with this. And then, how does your inner stability and regulation play into all of that?
Yeah. So I have a whole story about gate 39. Like it's such a lesson in my life. I don't have it. I have gate 55, which is the other end. I love that you said emotional wisdom, emotional intelligence. That's such a part of it. This is like, so for gate 55 to learn something about itself, right? To come into that space. And are you guys, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. Your video froze for a second.
I would repeat everything you said because it cut out.
Everything. Okay. All right. So gate 39 is here to provoke gate 55. Gate 55, like you said, emotional wisdom, emotional intelligence. Gate 55 is this huge player in this whole 2027 shift. So it's a huge gate in the whole human design gene keys system. And so personally, I have gate 55 in my unconscious Venus. So this is, you know, love, values, relationships coming like unconsciously. My son has gate 39 in his conscious sun. I know we've talked about this, like the two men that I've dated, like somewhat seriously over the last 8 years have had gate 39 in their conscious sun. My daughter has gate 39. My mom has gate 39. So when I tell you this gate is like so challenging for me, like it's constantly, I always say it's like poking the bear, and it's hilarious to watch. Like my son, there was such a good example the other day. This is like what he does, right? It's like this, having this gate like really prominent in your chart or just in general, it is like always picking the scab. It's provoking, but it's not doing it like with malintention, right? It's here to show you something. And it's like, if you're being triggered by it, that's kind of your self-reflection. But like the other day, actually it was yesterday, we were running late in the morning. And this is just a small example, but this is kind of like the theme of like what I noticed with this gate. And my son, because he's got a defined route, he's just always on his own time. I have an undefined route. So I feel the pressure to like get places, and he doesn't care. He's just like taking his time. So I was like, okay, you need to get your shoes on. He's like, I think they're in the car. He's like slowly walking around the house. He's like, I think they're in the car. So then he goes in the car, and I'm sitting by the garage door, and I'm like, I'm not going to lock this door until you tell me your shoes are in the car. And he goes, yeah, I have like 3 pairs of shoes in here. I'm like, okay. So I lock the door. He goes, oh, just kidding, I don't have them in here. And I was like, oh my God, right? But he actually had them in the car. He was just like, the kids now call it rage baiting, but like this is what he does to me all the time. And it's like a lesson of just like letting things go. Like, let kids be kids. Like, who cares if I'm 2 minutes late? Who cares if it's so for me. But again, like that emotional grounding, the ability to ground yourself and not be constantly triggered by that energy. And he's not doing it to be mean, right? He's literally just having fun. He's just being him. And so I think that when you understand, this is where I think that these systems are so beautiful in relationships, because I could sit here and scream at him like all day, because he's just like, it's always like a constant thing with him. Or I could just see it as being him. He's being playful. He's being himself. And it's showing me how to anchor more into myself. And it's showing me the areas that I still need to heal of myself and my childhood and my inner child. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's just like a small example. But I think the theme of like what it does is, simultaneously incredibly frustrating and also really beautiful.
I have 39 conscious and subconscious.
Do you know, let me, I didn't pull up your human design. Do you know what planet it's in?
No, I have no idea. All I know is on my app.
I can pull it up.
Okay.
That's too advanced for me.
But it's really, and even in the men that I dated that had this, I would notice them too, right? They triggered me so much in the time that we were dating, but both of them in reflection helped me heal so much of myself and help me like ground in and have patience and slow down and know like it's not that big a deal kind of energy, right? But I really had to go through the pain of it to see something about myself, right? And so, like I said, they weren't doing it to be dicks. Sorry, I hope I can curse on this.
Swear away.
They weren't doing it to be like mean or malicious. It was just them, right? They would just point out things that hurt me because I wasn't seeing it myself, So that's
is it
like
because you don't have 39 and the people you're interacting with do? Am I understanding?
Well, I have gate 55, which is the other.
Oh, you
have
the opposite,
right?
Okay.
So it's sort of like I'm calling on this energy, but like even if you don't have gate 55, just like energetically, this gate, that's kind of what it does.
Yeah.
And especially for them to have it in their sun, this is like 70% of their personality. It's part of their incarnation cross. So it's literally what they're here to do, is to provoke people. And that's even with my son. I tell him like there are people that you're going to bother. Like not everybody is going to like you because you kind of say it how it is, and not everybody's ready to face themselves. I see it in the dynamic with my parents. My son will do things and they're just like, ah, and I'm like, okay. It's kind of annoying coming from a 9-year-old, but like that's his purpose in life, right? Yeah. Is to kind of poke you a little bit and make you see.
Oh, yeah. So I'm looking, and Crystal, this is in your south node.
So what does that mean? That I'm constantly annoying.
South node is like where it's what you're supposed to be moving away from, but it's like when you're triggered or when you're feeling uncomfortable, it's kind of what you move back towards, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a Cancer south node, right, like that nurturing part of yourself, like you're supposed to be moving more towards Capricorn energy, right, which likely is uncomfortable for you. So for you to take care of people and like be that nurturing energy, or obviously Cancer also has the hard outer shell, right? So it's not always, but when you let people in, you take care of them. Instead of that, you're supposed to be more like this, almost like, I don't know, I use the crone word with Capricorn because I feel like it is sort of like the older, wise, like feminine archetype in the family that is, she will discipline you, right? Like, but she'll also like tell you how it is, and she shares her wisdom, and all the kids are always like running to her for information. But it is sort of like a harder energy than, let's say, than Cancer, right? So it's, does that make sense? So like when you're feeling like the energy of Cancer and the energy of that provocation part of it feels more comfortable to you in times of discomfort than stepping into sort of the Capricorn energy.
Interesting. Okay.
And remember, the North Node is one of your anchor points for your Yod that we discovered. So
yeah,
this is all very interesting, like how this is coming together today.
we're going to be discovering so much about each other. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
so
right.
that was all January, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're still in January.
3 hours later, we'll get to December. No, I'm just kidding.
So I guess before we move on to February, what are some, after everything we've talked about, what are some keywords to carry with us as because this will go out in January. So what are some keywords we can kind of keep in mind as we go through the month?
I have some core themes for January as like healing that turns from inward to outward, emotional maturity, disciplined ambition, and new spiritual cycle beginning. So those are like the core themes. The shadow themes, because I think these are also important, especially as we're coming through like a year of one, would be escapism. This is going to come up a lot. Forcing outcomes, aligning with power for a result instead of from integrity, and emotional reactivity disguised as productivity.
I love that. Yeah, I would just say mine just like super simple. I was just like anchor point, practicality, right? And I do think that with Neptune, it's very, I think, like I said earlier, I think getting clear and having that anchor point is really important as Neptune moves into Aries. So, okay. Do we want to move on to February? Is there anything else you want to add to January, Sheena?
No, I don't have anything else to add. Let's move into February.
Okay. Do you want to start February?
Sure, I can start. So for February, I'll start with the keywords because that was my intention with January, but I got a little off track. So the core themes that I have for February are authenticity versus belonging, values revolution. So this is kind of carrying over from what you had shared about January. Disciplined leadership, desire as an initiation point, and perception recalibration. And some of the main things that I have written down about that are that on the 1st of February, the moon is going to be opposite the personal planets in Aquarius. And this is a full moon in Leo at 13 degrees, which is gate 33 in human design, which is the gate of privacy. This is being able to take in the stories of the collective and hold them as sacred. So it's kind of interesting that that's how that's coming up. It's going to be highlighting the tension between your individual expression and your collective identity. And this is sort of that opposition of the personal planets and then the full moon again, right? We're kind of revisiting some of that, but the theme is a little bit different because this full moon is in Leo. This is authentic self-expression versus what like the group acceptance of things usually is. Are you able to be yourself in your current group situation? Or are you going through the motions of what is accepted there and performing how they expect you to so that you don't get cast out? This is going to be a really intense initiation if you have not had that experience throughout the last year. I'm sure that there were times where that probably has come up. So just kind of look back to that over 2025. Have you felt this? This is going to be a very much similar feeling to that if you have. And then this also is, I'm not here to like scare anybody about the astrology, but if you continue resisting this change, the end of the year is probably going to bring up a lot of challenges for you. This is all here to help kind of guide you into where we need to be energetically as we close out the year of 2026, because in human design, 2027 is kind of a big deal. So that's the major one. We also have Uranus stationing direct. And this is happening in gate 8, which is 27 degrees of Taurus. So that's really interesting. Then we have Saturn moving into Aries on the 14th, which is 10 days later. Saturn, anytime Saturn moves, I also feel this one a lot because I have a Capricorn heavy chart. So Saturn's movements are really intense for me. It's also probably going to show up if you have strong Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn placements, because it's all in the cardinal signs. And this will be squaring those at some point. So this is all about discipline. This is how you lead. It's your consistency, your long-term goals. We're not looking at quick wins here. This is like building the foundation for the future. So that one is happening on the 14th. Then on the 17th, we have a new moon and the first eclipse. And this is happening at 28 degrees of Aquarius, which is gate 30 in human design. And I have that written down as the gate of desire. But I don't know, like some people kind of call these gates different things. So if you have something different, let me know. This is really interesting. And we can kind of deep dive on that in a second. And then on the 24th of February, we have Mercury going retrograde at 22 degrees of Pisces, which is the gate of crisis in human design, gate 36.
Yeah. So, okay. So yes to all of that. I think so. Gate 30, I'm just going to jump right into that because I have that in my unconscious sun. And yeah, the other names for that is the clinging fire. And again, it is all about desire. And it's so interesting because it's like this, we're constantly chasing the next thing. Like I think the lesson of gate 30, just I guess diving into that new moon there, starting there, it's like we don't have to actually do anything about every desire that comes through us, right? Because there's this expectation that's built, and it's kind of creates this like we're constantly chasing the next thing, we're chasing the next desire, right? It's like this fire that's like constantly burning in us. So it's like if you can just like allow it. And I think the big thing, and one of my big lessons is like when we get into that energy, like we don't always have to do anything with it, and it will kind of fizzle out. It'll like pass. But also the big thing is like not shaming yourself for it, because I think we get in this huge shame spiral of like, oh, I want this thing, or I'm chasing this thing. And then the perception of other people, and we worry about like all this kind of stuff. So it's like, can we actually just feel the desire? Because I do think desire, there's different layers, I think, and nuances to the word, but in itself is not bad, right? Like we all have desires, we all have urges, we all have these things that come up within us. But it's like when we hold the expectation, or when we constantly chase the next, that's when the crash happens, right? Like that's when the emotional like disappointment or whatever, and it triggers the emotional experience. It's also opposite to this gate 41 that Pluto is in, right? So it's that gate 41 is like the initiation of the emotional experience. So it's like, can we have that initiation and have these desires without like, it kind of like crashes and burns when we're in that shadow aspect of it. So I just wanted to kind of like jump in and speak to that point. But as far as everything else, yeah, like Saturn moving into Aries, again, this is going to be this huge, this thing we've been talking about for like a year plus, right? Where now we have Saturn and Neptune together moving in, like the spiritual warrior type of energy, right? It's like, I feel like Saturn in Aries, just in itself, like taking that alone, it's sort of like, it's like trying to drive with a parking brake on, right? Because Aries is fast. It really doesn't always think through things. It wants to move, it wants to go. And then Saturn rules Capricorn, right? It also is a co-rule of Aquarius, but like Capricorn energy where it's slow. It wants to do an anchor point. It's like discipline. And I think if you're trying to move too quickly, Saturn is going to embody more of that disciplinarian part of it, right? Versus, the wisdom and things like that. So it's like, can we, in that energy, kind of like, yes, we want to move quickly, we want to go fast, but Saturn's like, but hold on, can we maybe give it a pause? Instead of reacting, can we pause and respond, right? But of course, with Neptune being in this conjunction, right? That's why like that spiritual warrior, getting clear on what you're fighting for, like not just falling for everything, because there's going to be a lot of delusion around that. But like, can we, oh my gosh, I still wish I remembered that term that Chris Brennan had, because it was so good. I was like, yes, that's it. Right. But like being able to be in it and not, because it's going to be confusing. And I think that Jana Romer, if you're familiar with her, it was a while ago, but she was like, anybody right now who's not confused, I'm more concerned about that. You are confused, because like with all this going on, like we should be confused, right? Like there's so much happening. And then Uranus stationary direct. I as a Taurus sun and stellium, like I'm so, and I know Sheena, you too, like I'm so excited to have Uranus move back out of Taurus eventually this year, but like station direct is like the starting point to that. And yeah, all the inner planets that are moving into Aquarius are going to be square to Uranus at some point in the month. So this is just, and Uranus is a big player this year. And gate eight, the shadow of gate 8 is mediocrity. So gate 8 is holding together the gate of contribution. And so this is a lot about like maintaining the illusion, right? Like the system, the status quo, right? And so Richard Rudd makes a really good point with this gate where it's like, Uranus is the great awakener and Gemini is going to be our mind. So I feel like Uranus moving into Gemini eventually, and we'll get to that, but it's really shifting the way that we see things. It's really shifting our perspective. And especially as it's in this aspect with Pluto, and I'm sure we'll get into that, this like little mini triangle that's happening from, for years, like I think it hits its apex this year and then it starts to fizzle out a little bit, but it's going to be pretty strong into 2027. But this is like really radically changing the way that we see things. And so Richard Rudd talks about this specific gate, and it's like, even when you look at like spirituality and doing things differently, or, the whole now movement in the West, it's like, are we actually trying to be more authentic in ourselves and in our spirit and like all those things? Or are we reacting to trying to get out of the system? Right. So it's like, you have to pay attention to like, are you so afraid of mediocrity that you're forcing yourself into this new way of being? Or like, can you actually be present and just like be in it? Right. And follow yourself. So that's where, Uranus is in gate 8, moves into gate 20, which is the gate of now. Right. And not this month. It moves at some point in the year into gate 20, but those are the two gates Uranus is going to be moving through in 2026. And so gate 20 is the gate of, the gate of the now. So it's like in its highest expression, it's about presence, right? And it's just like being able to see the beauty in presence. And I can't remember if we talked about this on online or offline, but it's like, I feel like a huge lesson for me, it's just been like watching all of these things kind of like fall out, but being so present and just being able to look around and just be like, okay, like there's so much beauty actually in life, regardless of my relationship status, regardless of what's in my bank account, regardless of like all these external factors, right? I feel like if you pause and really be present, you will see, like, you can find gratitude for something. Like I remember a friend years ago, I was so upset about something and she was like, what can you be grateful for? And I was like, nothing. She's just like, Rochelle, listen to yourself. Like you can be grateful for something. Everybody can have gratitude for something in every moment. Right. And I think that's the lesson. It's like, there's so much like shock and truth and awakening and, collectively. And I think that, doing the work and anchoring in is so important again, because it's going to be so easy to be taken off in all these different directions this year, and I was listening to a video or YouTube with Richard Rudd and Pam Gregory, and they were just talking about this being the bridge year. Like last year was hard. This year is still going to be hard, but it's this bridging between, this old way of being, and then with whatever 2027 is going to bring, right? With this new epic or epoch or, age of Aquarius and all the things. So it'll be really interesting. And then, Mercury. Okay. So Mercury going retrograde at the end of the month. Mercury is now going to be retrograde in water signs. And I've been talking about this because this last Mercury retrograde rocked my world in Scorpio. And Scorpio for me is my 4th house. It's my IC. So it's really intense. It's my inner world. It's my family, my home life. So all of my childhood patternings, and it was so hard. All my relationship patternings came up and it was so hard, but also really beautiful in the sense that it showed me what I need to, like, all of my old habits, right? And patterns and emotional patterning. And so Mercury retrograding through water signs is good. That's the theme of it, right? For everyone. It's like what emotional patternings are coming up, like what you need to let go of, what childhood things are coming up, right? So this one's going to be in Pisces. So wherever Pisces is in your chart, like take a look at that. But of course, Pisces is mental health, right? Pisces is spirituality. Crystal has rising and moon in Pisces. It'll be fun for
Yay!
you.
Love this for me.
Yeah. But, and I think that, just, Scorpio and Pisces are different, but just the water theme. But I think that maybe looking back to how you handled Mercury retrograde in Scorpio and like things that came up, it's going to show up in a different way because, Pisces is different and there's different things there. I have Jupiter in Pisces. So, depending if it hits that, I don't, I haven't looked at the exact degrees actually, but yeah, it's going to present differently. But just noticing those themes that come up, like, are you slipping into like addictive patterns, right? Instead of more like meditating and things like that. And also like not shaming yourself. Because I think that we're all exactly where we're meant to be. And I know it's so cliche, but we're exactly where we're meant to be doing what we're meant to be doing in this journey. And if we can release the shame and the guilt, which personally was a huge lesson this year, just like let it go. You know what I mean? Like we're our own worst critic. So it's like, can we just like, I put a picture of myself as a baby, or it's not on here now, but like on my phone, just to like see, like every time I'm like that with myself, that's who I'm talking to, right? Like that's the part of me that's really seeking attention. So instead of just shaming myself and feeling guilty and bad and all these things, can I just hold her and like be with her and like move on, like coming into that present moment, like coming into now and finding gratitude. So yeah, I think that is what I have for, and gate 33. So then going back to the first, that full moon in Leo. So it's actually not the eclipse. This one is the one that's on my ascendant. I have gate 33. My ascendant is at 12 degrees of Leo. It's like 1253 of Leo. And so this is in gate 33, that gate of privacy. It's really interesting because this is like, I feel like Richard Rudd describes this as meeting with a friend, having a cup of tea and kind of like reflecting on the past or like moving through things and then like moving on to something else, right? It's this point of reflection. And Sheena, I really like the way you described it, right? Of coming in with like the collective. How did you word it? I can't remember now, but it like gave me chills when you said it. Just like the collective memory, right? And kind of is that how you worded it?
Coming in like with the stories of like the history of the collective.
Yes.
And then we have to treat it as it's sacred. That's one thing that's like a hallmark of this is people that I've come into contact with who have had it, like the charts I've read, the people that I know who have it, they all have like a really deep reverence for whatever that collective history and story is. And like, how does that shape our future? That's really like the purpose of it, right? Is to be here to help us learn from the history so that we don't continue to repeat it. And like, how do we use that to shape a better future? And I love that. I think it's such a great, I don't have that one, but I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I have it. It's my moon and my rising gate. And it's sort of like fully like seeing it and filing it and understanding it so that, so you're not repeating it, or you can go back and be like, well, because if you don't fully move through something, if you don't fully process something, it's going to keep coming back, right? So it is actually, like you said, it's taking that sacred pause to like fully have the experience and fully finish it and cycle through it. And then you can kind of like move on to something else. And I think for a long time, for me personally, it was like almost like forced, but then you get to a point where like you can't force that kind of stuff, right? Like I like that word sacred, right? Where it's like holding it and just and being with it and being able to like then let it go peacefully, calm, and with love and just then move on. So yeah, that's what I have for February.
All right. One last thing that I have to add to this is where we encounter our first Yod for the year. So on the 11th, the configuration will kind of take place. It's a slow moving one, not super slow moving, but like over probably a 48 to 72 hour period, we're going to feel the intensity of this as it kind of bridges across the apex point. So this is made up of Mars at 14 degrees of Aquarius, which is in the gate of the listener, gate 13. And the other anchor point is the moon at 14 degrees of Sag, which is gate 5. And this is patterns. So we're looking at the listener and patterns, right, as the anchor points. And then the apex or the activation point of this Yod is Jupiter at 16 degrees of Cancer, which is gate 53, starting things. So it's like this is an initiation because it's literally happening in the gate where things begin. And it's really interesting that this is the first one of the year. So the way that I kind of saw this one was that something new is going to begin, but it's only going to happen after we listen deeply and recalibrate to the new rhythm. So this is like the beginning of building that bridge, right? I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Like, this is so exciting. So also understand that this is going to feel really awkward in the beginning, because we're basically relearning how to walk in this new way, right? So as we're taking those first steps, we're going to be a little bit wobbly. Just be really gentle with yourself when you're going through this process. Remember that it's not about perfection. This whole year is not about perfection. It's about figuring out how to be in your 100% authentic self in all of the things that holds for you. And there is sort of a sense that something new is starting out, but it's not going to be unfolding the way that we expect it to, because Uranus is such a big part of everything that's taking place in, you know, the year of 2026. So everything that you think, you know, you can just throw that in the trash and just like take it as it comes. That's what, you know, the present moment. And I love what you said about gate 20, but I feel like it also applies to gate 8, because the channel 8-1, I have this in my chart. It is my North node and my Saturn placement. So that is really about like, how can I be here in this present moment, living only for now? And then how do I contribute from that space holistically? It's not about just being in service to other people. It's being in service in the right moment, right? And this is very much like preparing us for when it moves into gate 20, which is the present moment. And being in gate 8, like, this is mutative energy. This is here for the purpose of change. It's going to look weird because it's Uranus, you know, in this placement. So just know that, like, we can't possibly understand or anticipate what this is going to look like. And it's going to continue to evolve as time goes on. So yeah, just, you know, knowing that this Yod is coming up, it's the middle of February. It's an invitation for us to all come together and take a look at what the collective history is. Can we listen to the lesson that lives in that collective history? And where is that taking us?
I find that it's so interesting that this is happening at the beginning of the year. It's almost like it's setting the stage for the rest of what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how astrology does that, right? Just like, it makes sense.
And it is interesting that it's happening like right around Valentine's Day too.
I thought that too. I was like, oh my gosh.
But that's literally when Saturn and Aries are, Saturn and Neptune are conjunct. It's February 14th. That I think the exact date of conjunction is. So on Valentine's Day, it's still gonna be very present. So this is just a lot of like, yeah, like illusion, I guess. Like, are we sure of like what let me see if I'm curious if anything specifically. No. Well, the sun's going to be square to Uranus on the 15th. So it is pretty intense energy for Valentine's Day. I can't remember what it was last year. There was something on Valentine's Day last year that I was like, that's interesting. I think it might have been like Venus, Neptune in aspect, which is very like delusion, which was actually kind of a nice energy to have for Valentine's Day, because it's like romanticize things, like go out and be delusional for a little bit. But
love that. All right. What's going on in March?
You want me to go? You want to go?
Yeah, you go first on this one.
No, will you start with the words? I like
keywords.
Yeah.
Okay. Keyword. Okay, we can do that. So core themes in March, we're looking at integration over perfection. So carrying over some of the themes from February. Spiritual rebirth. So that sounds fun. Emotional intelligence, devotion and surrender, and relational healing are the key themes. And then the shadow is self-criticism, mental spinning for certainty, idealization over disillusionment, and then scandal and hidden truths resurfacing. And then watch out for bypassing your own grief. Grief is going to come up in March.
I love that. Yeah, for March, the big ones that I see, we're going to have that total lunar eclipse in Virgo. And that is in, oh my gosh, where is it? Gate 64. And that's happening on the 3rd, March 3rd. And March 18th, we have that new moon in Pisces, gate 25. So this is going to be, Neptune is still in gate 25. I believe Neptune's gate 25 all year. Yeah, it is. So even though it's still Pisces, it's that 28 degrees of Pisces. So that anarchic degree, that finalization of Pisces energy. And then on the 10th of March, Jupiter stations direct in Cancer. So we're kind of again starting this movement towards, now we're going to be moving into Leo later in the year. And then Mercury stations direct on March 20th, which will be nice because, well, who knows what it's going to bring, that retrograde energy of Mercury moving through Pisces. But again, if this last retrograde through water sign Scorpio was any indication, it is likely going to be a little bit intense. And that's a big, like, as far as like transit wise, I mean, there are a lot of like little transits that are happening. I mean, nothing's little, but there's a lot of other transits that are happening, but nothing with like the outer planet. Well, I'm just kidding. March 28th, Saturn's going to be sextile to Pluto. So again, this is sort of like that. Saturn's going to be, so this little triangle that we have is with Uranus, specifically Neptune and Pluto, but because Saturn's in the mix now, Saturn's going to move off this year, but the outer planets are still going to be in this configuration. And so that's happening. It's going to be direct, I guess, the 28th of March, that sextile.
Yeah, I only have a couple things to add to this. We do have, let's see, there's a grand trine that will be taking place. I believe it's on the 7th through the 8th, which is right around the Venus, Neptune, Saturn conjunction. And it's formed by Mercury in Pisces, Jupiter in Cancer, and the moon in Scorpio. This is going to bring out some emotional intelligence. That's where that key phrase comes from, is this trine moment that we're having. There's Mercury in Pisces. This is in gate 63. So it's here to process information and help us intuitively and symbolically make sense of what that is bringing up. It's also mental pressure that's going to ask us what is true and what is not. So lean into your intuition with that. Let that kind of be your guide and teach you, like, if your gut's telling you something's not real, it probably isn't. Or it at least elicits more research and questioning around that subject. I will always err on that because every time that I've gone against my gut, I've regretted it. So, but I'm also saying that as like a sacral being. So if you don't have that, like lean into whatever your authority in human design is. Jupiter is going to be in gate 39, which is, again, provocation. This is asking us how we build protection, care, and emotional bonds. So it's a really interesting placement in conjunction, well, not conjunction, in trine, I guess, to Pisces and being gate Mercury in Pisces in gate 63. And then the other point is the moon in Scorpio. This is in gate 1. And this is seeking for truth. It's looking for authentic self-expression. It's watching out for healing and collective storytelling. This is going to show up as emotional reckoning if you have not done this work. So I'm just telling you now, if you haven't been doing the work to get really clear with yourself, get really authentic, to remove the disillusionment that you have with yourself, be really radically honest with yourself, you're going to feel it when this transit hits. Scorpio being in this gate is very intense. And this is also going to bring up insights and creative expression. And then it's going to build shared meanings between the collective. So there are some things here that I can see even just up to March would kind of force us into a position of being like, oh, I got to do all this work, like put the blinders on and like hide out and be a hermit and go through all of this alone. Please don't do that. The more that you do that, the more that you're giving into the patterns and the systems and all of the things that are falling apart. You need each other now more than ever. So build your community, be in community with people, lean into vulnerability. It's so hard. And I understand that. And I know what I'm asking, Like, please do this work because it's going to make this transit so much easier, and some of the coming transits as well. And then I have on the 26th, the Venus will be conjunct Chiron at 25 degrees of Taurus, which is again gate 8. So Venus is going to be sitting there with Chiron, and this is going to feel like a collective healing. We're going to be focusing on self-worth and belonging. So that theme is kind of coming up again about how do we fit in with our groups? How is it in authenticity? Is it kind of going through the motions so that we don't get excluded from things? Like, this is it's a deep reckoning with what groups you're engaging with and why. So this is also a reminder that individual worth is going to be reinforced through belonging to something that is sustainable and also reciprocating. Reciprocating is a huge part of this gate 8 transit. We're going to see multiple things moving through that. We want to be in spaces where we're giving and also receiving. You don't want to be in spaces where, like I said before, you're in this group, you don't really know why you're in it. You have to perform a certain way to belong to it. That's not reciprocal. That's just draining. And if you continue to be a part of those groups, the end of the year is just going to be a lot harder.
Yeah, I love that. That's for one thing that I want to share too. I feel like that's helped me in my just like emotional experience over the last year has really been just understanding the distinction between like emotions and feeling, because I think that you talk about like sacral beings, and 70% of us are sacral beings, right? And so whether it's your sacral or like whatever it is, it's your intuition, right? Essentially at the end of the day, like coming into your body and trusting yourself. And I think, emotions are just like the physical sensations in your body, right? The feelings are the mental narratives that we attach to it. So I think that just distinguishing that has been really helpful in allowing myself to like going back to that theme of like presence and like coming into our body. Like, can you just be with the sensation in your body and not make it mean anything, right? Like, I really work to like poke holes in things. Like when my mind latches onto something, it's like, okay, do I actually know for a fact that can be true, right? And I think sometimes we look for like these big examples of like, if it's like, I'm not worthy. Well, when were you worthy? Right. And you're trying to look for these huge grand examples. Was like, just like even little things, right? Like finding gratitude and, reflecting on my day, like in evening journaling, it's like finding like small wins. It doesn't have to be anything like massive or big. And the community piece, I think is, with Pluto and the whole new age in Aquarius, we're doing community differently. Right. And it's such an interesting thing, because it's like, even like sometimes trying to explain it, I think it goes over people's heads still a little bit of just like what it's going to look like. And I think maybe we don't even fully know what it's going to look like, but it's like this idea of like honoring the individual within the community, right? There's not necessarily this like top-down leadership that traditionally has been in communities. It's not like one person's like, I run the show and you all are like pawns. It's like, no, we're all in this together. And I think that taking that leadership out of it in that way is confusing to people, because it's like we're honoring everyone in our creativity and our individuality within this space. And it's like, it's uncomfortable moving into that, and even to what you said, Sheena, like, yes, it means being vulnerable and showing up in community, and it feels weird and sticky. We're just like not quite sure how to navigate it. I even noticed in certain places in this new age, like community space, where it's like you almost, and I have a North Node in Aries, so maybe it is like part of that. Does somebody need to step up and take leadership? But it's like we're all doing that, right, in our own way, and we're contributing things into the pot that are so unique to us and honoring each one of us in that way. So I think that's really beautiful. And I think that it's going to become easier over time. And like, as we show up in these new ways. And so, yeah, putting yourself in spaces and places that feel good and that are supportive and that honor that part of like each of us, because I think that's where we're heading as a collective. And like I said, I think that it's on some level still confusing to people, right? Like how that actually looks. Cause it's like, there's not one person like sitting at the top. No, we're all there. Right. And that's the beautiful thing about Aquarius, is it's been so, and I think that's where like Saturn ruling Aquarius comes in, right? Where it's like, it's been so embedded in the systems and the structures that it can see what doesn't work, and it can see how to effectively do it differently. Right. It can be like on the outside, and like, so yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's all I got. I think I had something else to say, but it'll come back maybe.
Yeah, that's fine.
I like that this is all taking place in spring too. Sheena and I are big big, big year is in March. It starts in March instead of January. So I like that community is a big thing as, society starts to emerge out of winter, at least where we live, where it's cold. And like, just starting the year in March when spring comes. So I like that.
Yeah. I love the way that you talked about it too. And I think this is such a really helpful metaphor for what the age of Aquarius is going to look like, which is, like everyone coming together and we're basically making soup, right? And everybody brings like their own special ingredient. And this is kind of what makes different cultures really fascinating, is that they all have like their little special like element to them. And we honor that. And there is like something really special about whatever that unique thing is, and people are the same way. So like each individual person, like, yes, we're all connected, yes, like we're all having the same experience, we're all just human beings going through this and having this spiritual experience together, and at the same time we're also so deeply unique from each other. So each thing that we bring to that like soup of leadership, which sounds kind of weird, but each of us brings something special to that. And when we do that and we honor the way that everybody else is also showing up and we're all coming in it together, it makes everything have to work differently, right? And I think that it lends itself to what you were saying about Saturn kind of going into Aquarius. Like it's helping us to set up what that structure is going to need to look like. And it's going to help us create like how do we build something that's sustainable so that as we move into the future, it gives as much to us as we give to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think like if you look at Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius too, like it would be so unpredictable and it would be so rebellious and so no anchor point and just like more like chaos, right? I think you have to have that Saturnian energy in there. And for a long time, I didn't understand how like Saturn would fit into Aquarius. It was like it doesn't make sense. It's like you just think of like Capricorn, but exactly like what you said, it does make sense actually to have that foundation of like what is going to work and what is going to be sustainable while everything else is kind of like seemingly like trying to make sense on top of it, yeah.
Okay, so now we can move into April. Some of the core themes that I have for April are truth in relationship, intentional action, ordering the chaos, opinion versus truth, mind-body discipline, and massive communication shifts. Some of the shadow things that show up here are going to be starts that are forced or too quick. So initiation that takes place too quickly. Argument as identity, which is a really interesting one. Tensions and somatic stress, mental overload, scattered attention, and getting stuck in ideas without embodiment.
I love that. Yeah, for this, this month, Uranus is moving back into Gemini. I think that, I mean, for me as a Taurus, that's like the big one. I'm waiting for it. But yeah, Uranus is going to move back into Gemini. And what you said, like that shifting of perspective, like this is like, and especially when you think about retrograding energy, right? It's like, I'm going to use an example of like a relationship just because that's kind of, I think the easy for a lot of us to relate to, but it's like when Uranus first moved from this point where it went retrograde, so 27 degrees, I think, to 1 degree of Gemini, I think it was when it went retrograde. It's like you're kind of like, especially with Uranus, the Great Awakener, truth, shock, all those things, right? You're starting to see the things that don't work, right? Things that you never questioned before. A Taurus, it's security, it's solid, it's stability, it's material, but it's like very fixed in its way. It's a fixed sign, right? And so when we think about relationships, we just never questioned anything, which is the way it was supposed to be. You were supposed to get married, you're supposed to have kids, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that, right? And then Uranus is starting to awaken us to the truth of like, oh wait, this actually doesn't feel good, but like I don't know why, right? But now as Uranus goes retrograde over it again, so now we kind of had the inkling that something wasn't quite working, right? Now it's becoming a lot more clear in the retrograde, and it's a lot more uncomfortable because it's like, oh shit, I have to do something about it now. Like I feel it, I see it, I'm getting more clear on it. It's kind of shocking my system. I'm really dysregulated. Like, how do I handle this? And then as it moves direct, it moves back into this. Now it's the opportunity to take action. Like we've seen it, we know it, we're uncomfortable. How can we change it? Like there is no other way around it, right? we're not all going to sustain the change, and that's fine, right? I think that, again, releasing the shame around things and surrounding yourself with supportive community and people and things like that. But we've had such a perspective shift. We can't go back to the way things were in that sense. Like, you might know that things are different, but you might choose to stay in the relationship. You might choose to work on it. You might choose whatever it is, right? Like, you're in it and that's fine. But you're never going to see things the way that you did before. And so that's like the huge shift with Uranus moving back into Gemini now. And, you know, like, it's just like radically shifting the way that we perceive things, the way that we see things, the way that we're understanding things, the way that we're communicating. Like, it's just all going to be different. And so, and again, you know, like Sheena, I think you said at the beginning of this, it's like, if you've been doing the work, it's a little bit easier. It's not going to be easy. You're still going to be faced with challenges, but you've understood a little bit. If you're not doing the work, it might feel a little bit more like a shock to the system than that, you right? Like, then if you've been in a little bit in awareness. So I think like that, for me, that's like the big one of this month, is like really coming into that energy of just like, okay, like everything is different now. Like, and I even noticed even from the beginning of 2025, right? Like, things are so different in the way that I perceive things and understand things and feel things, and just like everything, right? We're so different in that sense. So yeah, that's one of the big ones. We also have our full moon in Libra on April 1st. And that's going to be in gate 48. And then the new moon in Aries is going to be on the 12th, right? Yeah. No, the 17th on April 17th at 27 degrees. So we're officially out of that like 28 degree anaretic point. I mean, 27 degrees is still late degrees of the sign, but it's not at that. It's literally, since Libra, new moon in Libra, every single one has been 28 degrees. And that's going to be gate 3. And gate 3, I have gate 3. I think I believe, yeah, it's my north node. And so this is just like the gate of chaos, right? We have to have like gate 60 to sort of like anchor us into it, but it's difficult in the beginning, right? And I think that, you know, when they talk about the sacral center, whatever you have active is kind of like how your sacral operates. If you have a defined sacral, right? Whatever you have activated is sort of the way that it operates. And so I think just like understanding, even just for me, right? Like, there's always going to be chaos in the beginning for me. There's always going to be difficulty in the beginning, right? There's always this point, and I call it like the mad scientist, where it's just like you just throw everything out, and then it slowly kind of you have to like make sense of it, but you have to like have it all there. And I think just like collectively with the new moon here, you know, new moons are beginnings. We're setting the intentions, we're planting seeds. We can't always, you know, we don't know what the seed is going to grow yet. We're still in the dark a little bit, but it's like, it might feel chaotic. It might feel difficult. It might feel like you don't see clearly. It's like you're kind of like blindly like whatever, but it's going to make sense eventually, right? If you can just like let it do its thing and hold its magic, then it'll grow into something. And with new moons, I always think like, how are you nurturing things when you can't see them? Because that's like really the magic, I think, of that energy. It's like, are you out there watering the plants? Are you talking to it? Are you giving it love? When maybe it's not even going to sprout, you don't know, but you have to still go out and nurture it. And then when it, you know, it's like that, what is it? The 5 of Pentacles or the 7 of Pentacles, where it's like the imagery on the deck that I'm thinking about, you can see all the magic underneath, but he's just like standing there over, you know, the little like sprouts, but you know, you don't know what's the beauty that's underneath. You just have to like wait. And so, yeah, that's what I have for.
So a couple of things that I have for March. I have the 9th. We have Mars moving into Aries, which is going to be interesting. This is drive and discipline meeting.
Wait, did you mean May? Or
April?
April.
Sorry, yeah. I said March.
Yeah.
April. Start over. So for April, we have Mars moving into Aries. This is drive and discipline meeting the collective vision. It's a deliberate action point. This is where intention really starts to matter. If anger shows up, what can it teach you? And this is going to be impacting cardinal signs again. So we have Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, because it will either be moving direct in your sign if you're Aries, or forming a square to any of these. So just watch for those to kind of start showing up. It can be a little bit spicy, but Mars is sort of at home in Aries because it's the ruler of the sign. So just depending on the dynamics of your personal chart, that might be a little different. Then on the 17th, as you mentioned, we have that new moon in Aries. This is asking us, what are we ready to start commitment to? This is not impulsive. This is intentional. So again, that theme of intentionality is going to start showing up. This is a chance to also reevaluate goals and direction and who you think you are. And I love that question showing up here. This is also kind of bringing some awareness into like where we're stepping into things where we don't have a proper structure first. So Aries likes to move fast, right? It wants to initiate, take action, make sure that things are going according to plan. And it can kind of be a little bit impatient. There's a lot of fire here. There's a lot of forward trajectory with this. So it's just asking us to be really intentional about how we do that.
Yeah. And I was to say with the new moon with Aries, I mean, Aries in itself can be pretty impulsive, right? Because Aries can be reactionary instead of responding. So I think that like slowing down, but it's also gonna be conjunct Chiron during this new moon as well. So that can bring up some things for sure. So like really,
yeah, that's a good call out.
Yeah. And so I think like really just taking that pause, being intentional, like you said, this is calling for more intentionality, because if we're just like blowing past these things, are we learning the lesson? Right? Are we just like, there was I was reading a book on esoteric astrology, and they just like, I keep like repeating this phrase because I love it so much, but it's like the question of whether we have free will or if everything is just like predestined for us. And it's like the more awareness we have, the more free will we have, because if we're just in response mode to everything, we're just playing into the system, right? Where there is no free will because it's just reaction. We're just like constantly in that mode. And so I think, you know, what you said to like being really intentional with this new moon, like slowing down and seeing the lessons and being available for it and pausing, and not just like, you know, typical Aries, it's just like blowing through things and like starting a whole bunch of things and not being able to finish. But like, so, you know, the slowing down may feel harder for the Aries energy, but it's so important that I think that we anchor into that, so that we can actually learn it and not just like be in reaction mode.
Yeah, for sure. And this is where I think nervous system regulation is going to come in really handy here. So, you know, that's going to be something that we'll need to explore if you haven't been, you know, playing with that, or maybe you've practiced meditation in the past, or you've had like an intentional grounding practice. This is going to be an opportunity to revisit that and see if that is a supportive structure for you moving forward, because as we've already kind of tipped into that a little bit, that our structures as we move forward are going to have to evolve. So it's all going to have to change and move with us. So maybe like for me, one thing that I've kind of had a lot of feelings about is like, oh, I need to be better with my meditation practice. But I think I'm actually in a position where I need to start asking myself, is that supportive to where I'm going? Because it might not be the right structure for how I'm planning to move forward, or even supportive to like what my needs are going to be toward the end of the year, because all of these energies are going to shift and change, and they will inevitably bring up things for people that, you know, we're going to have to ask ourselves a lot of questions. We're going to have to do a lot of exploration around this. And so there's an opportunity here to kind of evaluate your own personal system as well.
Yeah. And I would say like also, so we're recording this the last few days of December 2025. So if you're listening to this now, like don't wait to get these practices until April, right? Like the time is now to start anything. So it's like, even if it's 3 minutes, right? Like 3 minutes a day, or whatever that looks like, you're going for a walk, even though yes, it's cold, or you know, whatever that practice looks like for you, something, you know, like Sheena said, I think like, you know, you're an MG, right? Sheena, or are you a generator?
Yeah, I'm an MG.
Okay, yeah. So it's like I feel like even with these practices, it doesn't always look the same, right? Like giving yourself grace to be able to like switch it up, but having something every day that like grounds you and regulates you, so that when these things come, like yes, we might feel ungrounded, we might feel dysregulated, but we have those practices to move through them a lot faster. And I think that's the goal. It's like it's not to avoid the thing, but it's just to be able to come back to yourself a lot faster.
Yeah, yeah. Authenticity is something that comes up a lot throughout the astrology of the year. And so I think that if you don't have a practice that supports this, like coming back into your nervous system, I mean, that's something that also is going to come up a little bit later in the year, is like dysregulation in the nervous system. If you don't have like a steady practice or something that is like tried and true, right, that you know you can lean on, those months are going to be a lot harder to get through because you're going to just be dysregulated the whole time. And then again, into that space of like being in reaction mode instead of being able to say, okay, like, let me come into my heart. Where do I go from here? Right? Like, how do I slow this way, way, way down? And there is some astrology, you know, like Saturn moving to, where is it going? I have to look now. I don't remember. My poor brain. I'm struggling so much, you guys. Saturn, where are you? Now I can't find it. Hold on.
Like Saturn right now or Saturn during?
It's moving into Aries. I'm sorry. Yeah. I was like, I know I just said it. So Saturn moving into Aries is sort of, it's like you said, it's like driving with the brakes on. So it's teaching us like the balance between that. So like the common trope is when you learn how to drive for the very first time, we like hit the gas, but it's so scary that we hurry up and hit the brakes, right? And that's kind of, we're going to be feeling that a lot throughout this year, is like hitting the gas and being like, oh, that's not actually where I want to be going. That's too fast. And then Saturn just pumping the brakes on you. And so like it's going to become a better balance between those two things. Like I think eventually we're going to get to a point where we're like, okay, now I can smoothly go about like whatever it is that I'm trying to do. But we have to establish those systems first. And Saturn moving into Aries is giving us the opportunity for that. And then this is definitely coming up again in April as we move through, you know, the new moon in Aries. And then we have Mercury, Saturn, Mars conjunction in Aries. Did you talk about that? Okay, so that's on the 20th. And this is happening in gate 17. And I think this one is really fascinating because Mercury, Saturn, and Mars all coming together there is like, it's really intense, right? So Saturn is here like trying to build these structures. Mercury comes in and like brings this element of communication. And Mars is sitting there like ready to take action, ready to move, probably getting frustrated because things are taking so long because Saturn is a part of the equation. And it's all happening in gate 17, which is the gate of opinions. And if I remember correctly, I think this is also a projection gate. So we're looking at this combination of like thoughts, structure, and then action. And so this is like this is just your reminder that just because you have a thought doesn't mean you have to do something about it. And that's what this is kind of telling me. Like, this is how it feels to me. I'm also open to like whatever anybody else thinks about it, but there's going to be consequences. If you act too quickly on your thoughts, there will be harsh consequences because Saturn is here and it's the disciplinarian. It's like the tough dad or the tough mom that shows up and is like, actually, no, you can't do that. And like brings you back in and makes you do your chores instead of like doing the thing you really want to do. Right. So just because you have a new shiny idea doesn't mean it requires action. So make sure that you're taking things slowly. This is also going to show up as courage and directness. And I think that that's really interesting. And I think it probably is the dynamic between the three planets all sitting there together because Mercury is communication, right? And Mars, I feel like that's kind of where some of the directness is going to come from. But Saturn also. And then, you know, kind of moving into like the courageous space. I feel like Mars is part of that as well. And then Aries, like being in that space of Aries, having the fire. We're probably going to be a little bit more reactive around this time period, just because this is all happening in Aries, and Aries kind of tends to be that. When we think about Aries, we can think about like the Fool in the tarot, right? The Fool is like taking that first step, not really knowing what the consequences are, and so not having an awareness of them. Does that make sense? Okay, so this one I think is really interesting. It also, one of the themes that it kind of feels like to me is like a will that's forged in fire. So this is like your willpower coming online, and like, how do we want to move forward? And this is forged through fire, through Aries, right? And learning like when to take it slow and when to be direct and like take action and do the things we need to do. So it is kind of repetitive, like explaining this, but I just want to make sure that we communicate like the nuance to it, because there are so many tiny details within this. And I think it can show up in a lot of different ways just based on the energies of your own chart.
It's interesting too. I think in the tarot, Mars rules the Tower card, I'm pretty sure. And it's really interesting because I always like, I don't know, when I see the Tower, I think of Uranus just with that like electric bolt. And I know that you said the Tower was your card for like last year. And I don't know, just this like relationship between like Mars and Uranus, like during this is kind of like coming up. And I know they're not like aspecting each other in any way, but just like the energetics of like what's happening this month with these both like kind of moving through. Also, Mercury and Mars are also going to be conjunct Neptune during this month as well. And I don't know, like Neptune, I know we've talked about Neptune and Aries, but like like as you're talking, I had this visual of just like um almost like think of like an action movie or like a fantasy movie or something like that, where it's like you have the wizard or the witch like in the middle of like the chaos and the fire, right? But it's like has this bubble around itself, so it's not like quite being penetrated. It's like in its own world within that, right? I don't know, I just like I love Neptune, and I just like was getting that visual, whereas you talk about like coming into yourself and coming into your authenticity and coming into your heart and like coming in Neptune being in gate 25. I mean, this is like love of the self. Like this is like it is so much of that energy. And so it's like within all of this like madness and chaos, can you like be that witch or the wizard with the stick that's just kind of like coming into, I don't know. It's like I think that like we all need to have a little bit of delusion when it comes to like any like grand dreams or anything that we have. Like we have to like have that sprinkled in a little bit, because it's like if we're not seeing the big vision and just like kind of what's our motivating factor, right? If we don't have that sort of delusional, idea. And I think it too comes down to, like we said, like community and surrounding yourself with the right people, because it's like people who don't see the vision or don't believe it, they're gonna be like, why would you think that you could do that? Or like, what, versus somebody who's just like, wow, like go for that dream, or like, what I mean, who also has like kind of the same energy. And I think that's, kind of would be, or is the really big supportive part of all of this. We also have on, I think, the 23rd of April, Venus is going to be conjunct Uranus in Taurus. And Venus being the ruler of Taurus, and Uranus being and this is at 29 degrees. So this is again that anaretic degree, like final degree of Taurus, like wrapping things up with this Uranus energy, and then Venus coming in there. And I feel like, again, like I keep like hammering it in, but just like getting clear on your values. And with this, Uranus is the great awakener. It's truth, it's shock, it's the electrical impulses in the body, it's all of these things. So we might feel a little bit dysregulated with this, like questioning things, but like it's really going to bring out that truth that we've been like holding on to, or really getting aligned with, I guess, in a way, like maybe bringing things out from that, right, that we can kind of hold on to, or making us question it. I don't know, but there's some big piece to this, especially being at that 29 degree of Taurus.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's a really good call out. And then the only other one that I have is there is a grand trine on the 28th between Pluto and Aquarius, Venus and Gemini, and the moon in Libra. So this is all in air signs. It's involving Pluto, Venus, and the moon. So it could potentially be like emotional. It could be bringing up some of those themes. There is a little bit of a gift to this, just because they're all balancing each other out in the same modality, right? Like they're all in the same element. Because they're all in the same element, there is a perception of balance between them, but there is a little bit of a risk to get stuck in the realm of ideas and then not bring that into the body, right? So we do have some really interesting mental things that are showing up here throughout the month, but the trick is going to be not to be impulsive with that, and then to make sure that anything that is moving forward, any of those things that come online for you, you want to bring them into the body and make sure that you're taking very careful, deliberate, and intentional steps as you move forward. And then on the 3rd of April, we have our second Yod. This one is made up of Uranus at 28 degrees of Taurus, the vertex being at 0 degrees of Aries. This is a collective vertex. This is a mathematical point on the chart. So it's not necessarily a traditional Yod because it's not actually a planet, but it does involve the moon. And that's why I still pulled this in, because the vertex represents fate. It represents how divine timing shows up in our lives, how those things show up and like kind of guide us to different things. So that being an element of a Yod feels kind of profound. So you can take it or leave it, like if you don't want to think of this as a traditional one, that's fine. I just think that it's really interesting, if nothing else. The apex is at 29 degrees of Libra. So we're in the anaretic degree of Libra with this one. This is showing us that change is inevitable. Destiny is being activated, and the emotional body is going to be resolving how this relates in our real tangible world. So again, nervous system regulation is going to be a big deal in the month of April. This is also going to be some themes of instability showing up in our material world, balance of identity and awakening. So these are kind of showing up as well. This is forcing a new beginning for the future, whether we feel ready for it or not. So this is the first real solid initiation point in 2026, the way that I am perceiving this. So it's very interesting. With Uranus being a part of this, I feel like it's bringing in, because Uranus is in Taurus, it's bringing in an unavoidable change to the material world. But it is also driving us toward our individual and collective destinies.
I love that. Yeah. So powerful.
I'm interested to see how that, because that's at the end of April, or no, the Yod is at
April
the
3rd.
beginning of April.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm interested to see how all of this is going to move into May. So should we dive into May? What's going on then?
Yeah. Some of the core themes for May are instinctive truth, pattern interruption, power in review, sustainable building, and focus and discernment. The shadow that comes along with this is fear-based survival loops, compulsive control, avoiding emotional vulnerability. So again, this theme of vulnerability is showing up, and distraction and goal chasing that is no longer aligned.
I like that pattern interruption, and of course, like building with Taurus energy is always a theme there. This month we have 2 full moons actually. So on the 1st of May, we have full moon in Scorpio. This is in gate 44. And then we have on the 31st of May, so literally bookending the entire month, we have a full moon in Sagittarius in gate 9, which is the gate 9 for me is, you have, Sheena, don't you have gate 9 a few times? Yeah. Okay. Gate 9 is my core wound in human design or in the gene key. So this one is like always a lesson for me personally, but like, I feel like gate 44 is the gate of depth, if I'm not mistaken. It's the well, right? Do you remember that one? Okay. And then yeah, gate 9 again, finishing it. It's just like, essentially, I feel like the lesson of gate 9 is, can you not look at the whole mountain and just literally, again, presence. I think that's like been a theme, like as we're talking about, but it's like, can you just like in this moment, like put one foot in front of the other, like not worry about all the other stuff. Cause it's so easy to be like, I have this grand dream, or I want to make this much money, or I want this relationship, or like whatever it is, whatever Neptunian thing, I feel like, right? Like the delusion, or like whatever that's coming with like Neptune and Aries. But it's like, okay, how can I actually practically like get there? How can I put one foot in front of the other? And so it's like starting that and just focusing on that versus the rest of it. But it's like, it can be really, we can also get so distracted by everything, right? And so it's like trying, just kind of like putting your blinders on a little bit And I know you had said earlier, I think like maybe it was in March, like not to do that, but there's like a theme, I think, too, of like, or at least with this, right? It's like, how can you just like focus on the one thing instead of all of the things that'll get you there? And then on the 16th of May, we have our new moon in gate 8, which I don't know when, hold on, let me see. This is, yeah, no, I'm trying to think when Uranus moves into gate 20 at 5 degrees of Gemini. So I think Uranus is still in gate 8 at this point. Yeah. So the new moon is happening at gate 8 at 25 degrees of Taurus. It will be loosely conjunct Uranus because I think, yeah, Uranus is in Gemini at this point. So it's out of sign conjunction. But yeah, so it's in gate 8, which we talked about, I think, in January when we were talking about January. And then Pluto stations retrograde May 6th. And, you know, Pluto is slow moving planet. So retrogrades, I feel like with especially outer planets, retrogrades, I think the most intense time of them is that point of retrograde, or like when it's stationing retrograde or direct. And then because it's there for so long, we kind of just get used to the energy of it, right? But it is, you know, internalizing that energy. So even when we're thinking of things of like technology or this community we've been talking about, right? Like how are we like maybe coming inside and just like reflecting on how that's showing up for us? Like, are we falling, you know, victim to like the whole like power by technology? Are we believing everything that we're seeing? Are we maybe even, I don't know, even ChatGPT and AI has just been like such a topic. A lot of people are like, don't do it. And I think that it's interesting too. And with 2026 and kind of all this too, it's like ChatGPT, I think, can be really supportive in, you know, business things, like not admin, but, you know, planning, or it can be really helpful in a lot of things. But I think what's happening is like, it has the potential to be taking over the human, right? So it's like now and I think Sheena, you and I were talking about this, but it's like when I write an email or when I read something that has typos, now it's almost like we value the human, right? It's like, oh, like I'll reread my newsletter and I'll see like a few typos. Sometimes I just leave them. So like at least people know I'm writing it, you know, because it's just like ChatGPT has taken the human out, and it's like we're trying to mimic the human. But at the end of the day, ChatGPT is a technology. It can't mimic the emotional experience that is the beautiful thing about being human. I don't know if I froze because you guys are frozen.
Yeah, your video froze for a second. No, I agree with you though. Like okay. I really love when now I normally, like, I'm a Capricorn and I'd be like, oh, use the wrong your or whatever, right? Like being annoyed by that thing. And now I'm just like, oh, like a human actually wrote that. So that's great. Like I think that that's the interesting thing is like, I'm not saying that AI is a bad thing. Certainly not. I think it's great, especially for computing like large amounts of data and going through that and combing through and like helping us understand those things. I can see like massive application for that in the healthcare system, and how much that could like transform the way that we do it currently and make a huge difference in how we move forward, like detecting things early. There's a lot of like really great benefit there. But again, like you said, I think the thing that's tricky is that we're outsourcing so much to it that now like the humans are forgetting the skill because we're outsourcing it to something else, right? Like it's like when you get given a calculator, you no longer have to do the mental math. And this is a very similar type of thing. So it's still important to be able to build the skill as a human to do the things, to be able to be like, oh yeah, like I know how to read a birth chart, right? Like you can go into AI and have it tell you about your birth chart, but it's not going to see the things that I'm going to see because like in my chart, I have a Yod and I look for it every time. ChatGPT isn't going to look for that. You can look for it yourself if you know what you're looking for, but they're also not going to look for a T-square, right? Like you will see that in a chart because you're like, that's a painful energy. And I know because I carry it. So this is why, like I said, don't put the blinders on because you don't want to eliminate the human from the experience. And this is a big thing. And I think it's going to come up over and over again throughout 2026 because we're shifting so quickly into this thing. Like it's evolving at a pace we don't even understand.
Yeah. And I think, you know, to what you were saying, so I think ChatGPT and AI, it's like, I think we have to incorporate it because it's here to stay. Like it's not going anywhere. But to your point, specifically with astrology or with human design, whatever you're using it for, like if I'm using it to help me create astrology blogs or like whatever, I have to be the expert over ChatGPT, because if I'm just blindly like, hey, write me a post about the new moon or whatever, if you know astrology and you're reading a post by somebody who used ChatGPT, you're going to know that they use ChatGPT because it's not accurate. It's not real, right? Like it can't have the breadth of like information. Like, yes, it can scan the internet and pull all these things, but there are so many nuances to it that I agree. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like, you need to be the expert over whatever chat or Claude or whatever thing that you're using. And more so to be able to, like, if you are going to use it in that way, to be able to prompt it correctly, to be like, this is everything that's going on, this is what I want the information on, help me out here. So it is just like astrology and human design, it's a support for you, but it's not you, and so I think using it in that way can be really helpful. But yeah, I think it's not going anywhere. So I think that we need to really discern like how we're going to be using it, because it is here to stay, clearly. But are we going to let it like take over, or are we going to keep our autonomy within that and just use it as a guide, like support or a guiding post, or whatever term I'm looking for there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is going to come up again, like as we continue to go through these transits, but like, what is the point of integrity that you can put into this, right? And also, like, what are the ethics surrounding how we use it to move forward? Because if we're not asking those questions and you're just going in and saying like, hey, write me a blog post about this, you've just removed your own expertise out of it. And honestly, I think that this is a big reason why I no longer feel the need to be on social media as much, because I removed myself from it. And I was like, oh, like half of this shit's not even real, right? Like you mentioned that earlier. And like, how much are we looking at these things? We're like, AI made this video and it's becoming so lifelike that now like you can listen to music and you're like, did AI make this music? Did, like we literally can't tell the difference. And it's not just with AI. It's also with like our political climate. It's also with a lot of the movements that are taking place where they're trying to rally people together to a common purpose. It's also happening in like all of the systems. Like I'm noticing it in my school. Like I'm finishing my master's degree and I'm noticing these themes show up in my school. And so I just think like it's going to be very pervasive and continue to show up in all of the systems and the things that we engage with. And so we have to become experts in being able to discern, what is real, what isn't. And then I think, I don't know, kind of to the point of where we began this tangent is that we're really coming to a place where like valuing the human behind it is so much bigger than just engaging with somebody on social media, right? Like I can like your post and that's great, but that's not actual engagement. And I think now that we've been in this sea of like really random weird stuff and trying to be like pushed in a direction, we're all starting to notice that it's guiding us in a direction we don't necessarily want to go. Yeah. And so it's time for us to start saying like, hey, that's not where I'm going, and then make decisions around that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that's why too, I'm seeing the younger generations go with more physical media, right? And I never have been a fan of digital media. Like back in the day when iTunes first came out, yeah, I downloaded songs and went on that whole thing. But like buying movies, I never was a fan of, because it's like, do I actually own it? And that's like the big question. Do you actually own the things you buy? And so I love that the younger generations are buying CDs and iPods, and like everything's coming back, like physical media is coming back because you own it. And yeah, I really like we kind of touched on this in yesterday's episode when we recorded, but it'll just be so interesting how 2026 is going to go and what's going to change, and how things are going to develop, because we're talking about this at the end of 2025. What if we come back at the end of 2026 and we're like, oh my gosh, we didn't see that coming? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Inevitably, I think we will.
Oh, it's going to be crazy. Yeah.
It always happens. We make these episodes where we're like, here's what the year is going to look like. I'm like, holy shit, I was wrong. Like, I can't wait for that moment where I get to be like, oh my God, I was wrong on all of these things, right? Which we just did like a couple of weeks ago. We went through and like went over all the things that we had thought were going to happen for 2025. And I was like, wow.
Woof.
I could not have predicted any of those things to happen, right? So these are just themes. It's not everything, but yeah, there's a lot going on in the month of May. May is going to be really interesting. A couple of things to add to what you said, Rochelle. The full moon is happening at the same time that Mercury will be conjunct Chiron. And that is happening in gate 3, which is the chaos, right? So that's great. Love that for us with this Scorpio moon. It's going to be really interesting. There's going to be some emotional release that's going to come up with that. Leaning into your instincts and then listening to the body. Those are the main things that I see around this. It can be kind of raw. There will probably be some conversations that arise that bring up who we are, how we identify ourselves is going to bring up the ego, right? And then we'll also be possibly bumping up against anger, just because Mercury and Chiron don't necessarily jive together super well. And whenever we're bumping up against themes around the ego, there can be some reactivity with that, right? Because this is how we think we see ourselves, and it's not the whole picture. It's just like this isolated view from the perspective of the ego. So again, just be gentle with yourselves. Know that like these are coming up for a reason. We need to learn these things so that we can move forward in alignment. And then at the end of the month, this full moon in Sag at gate 9 is asking us collectively, what are we going to continue to put our energy into? So it's sort of like we start with this evaluation of the self and we close out with this new directive toward collective energy. So that's kind of interesting. We also have Yods taking place at both of these moons. So that's super great. I don't know how I feel about May at this point. Like, honestly, it feels a little bit rough.
It sounds like it's going to be really intense.
Yeah. Intense is a good word for this. The Yod at the beginning of May involves the moon, and the Yod at the end of May involves the moon. So both of these are going to be pulling on emotional themes. The first one is Venus in Gemini and Saturn in Aries. Those are the anchor points for this Yod involving the moon. So this is all about how we communicate our emotions. So looking at the emotional truth, the undercurrent beneath the surface, those things will no longer be avoided. So kicking off May with a theme of like, we can't emotionally bypass things. We can't just slap a Band-Aid on it. Like, we're going to have to deal with this. And I think that kind of bleeds nicely into a lot of the other transits that are happening throughout the month. And then as we close out this Yod at the end of the month is the sun in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, and then the moon as the main point. So this is kind of bringing in some clarity and vision so that we can mature those things to be able to take the emotional truth and move forward from those points. So it's going to be a very emotional end cap on both ends of the month, bringing up a lot of those themes. The one at the end of May, I feel like this is like opening a chapter and then we're progressing through it and then we're closing the chapter. So this is, it's very interesting when this happens. I don't know how often it happens because I didn't look at the Yods for 2025. And I feel like maybe I need to go back and look at those because there were a couple of months where things felt like they may have been this way. So it's just interesting. Another thing is, as we close out May, there's kind of this new story of our own individual identities that's starting to emerge that might be like below the level of perception at this point, unless you've done a lot of work on yourself and you're really in tune with your own energies. But you're going to start to feel this emerge, and it's going to continue to develop throughout the summer and into like the fall months. And then we'll start to kind of close out what the new improved version of you is going to look like as we move into the next year.
Yeah, I will also say too that throughout the month of May, we have a lot of squares with our inner planets, with these outer planets. So like we have Mars square Jupiter, and then Mercury square Pluto, and then let's see what else. We have Venus square Neptune, Mars square Pluto, Venus square Saturn. So all these like minor, this minor triangle that we've been talking about, that's about truth, awakening, transformation, confusion, delusion, like all of these things, like all of these inner planets are like brushing up against them in challenging ways this month. So my birthday is May 15th. So I always love May, but I'm just like, what's it going to look like this year? But like, I think that, yeah, whatever, obviously challenges are always here to show us something. It's always here to help us move through something. So like becoming a new version of ourselves, or calling in that anchored version, or like whatever it is, like they're just going to show us. Squares in astrology are challenging aspects that call for action to do something about them, right? So it could be, we've been talking about it throughout this whole thing, presence, oh my gosh, authenticity, right? Like coming inside into your heart. And that's really, I think, going to be required this month. Like you said, we're starting off the month one way and we're ending it another way, like capping that energy. And so I think also within all of that, just pointing out those squares, but there's also like there's just like a lot going on with this minor triangle during May.
Yeah, I agree. I always look at squares, like when I'm reading a chart, I always communicate that as being like sandpaper. Squares, they feel so uncomfortable when you're going through them, but when you come out the other side, you're like a much more well-rounded person, because the sandpaper came in and just kind of like rounded you off, and if you have like a lot of those in your chart, I think you'll be able to know what I'm talking to here. But yeah, I love that.
I have a lot of squares. That's why I was like, it's like I'm so now used to that and like have more grace with that energy than like before, right? And everyone's got their own journey. But yeah, I love squares. They're hard, but they're beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I have a lot of them too, and I feel the same way about them. They're tough in the moment, but they're really good in the long term.
And like one other thing that I know we talked about like last year, I think too, but like if you, for all those Pluto and Scorpio babies, like Pluto moving through Aquarius over the next 20 years is going to be squaring your natal Pluto. Your natal Pluto. So there's a point in all of this that for me, I think my Pluto is at 5 degrees of Scorpio. So it's getting close now, right? And it's opposite my sun, or my moon, which is like a whole thing. But everybody with Pluto in Scorpio is going to be touched by this square in challenge over the next 20 years at some point. So fun.
Yeah. And that would be the early to mid 80s, correct?
Yes.
That generation.
Yeah. I think it's Pluto leaves Scorpio. I think I want to say 97, but I'm not 100%. Really? I think it's about 96 or 97. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. So it's there for a minute.
I couldn't remember.
I guess like 80. Yeah, early 80s, like probably 82 maybe. I could be wrong on that. I looked it up like last year, but I don't remember the exact dates now.
Yeah. Okay. So just at a glance, like if you're born within that window, you likely will have that placement. So just kind of maybe take a look at your birth chart and see where that is for you and when that square is going to be happening. Do you have anything else you want to add for May?
No, I think that's most of it. Yeah.
Okay. So for June, what I have for core themes is communication, refinement, worth, and body healing. This is really interesting. We have some fate geometry showing up because, again, I think there are Yods in June. Yeah, we have 2 of them again. And then we also have a lot of accountability in our work and leadership, and then a reset on the lens for the future. And with this, I have shadow themes of speaking too fast, projection, misinformation, overstimulation, emotional labor without boundaries, performative leadership, and burnout disguised as ambition.
Interesting. Do you want to start with the transits? Do you want me to start?
Either way, it doesn't matter. If you want to go, you can.
Sure.
Whatever you don't cover, I'll cover. So
okay, yeah, we'll get it covered for sure. All right. So this month is big in, so Chiron is going to be moving into Taurus this month on the 19th of June. And so it's going to be going back into Aries later in the year, but this is the start of Chiron in Taurus. Now, Chiron, again, being our wounded healer, collective wounded healing. Taurus is our body, it's our finances, it's our self-worth, it's our comfort, like creature habits, comfort habits. And so where are we feeling insecure is the word that's coming from me, or just like collectively, what are our woundings around like food, around our body, around our resources, right? Like these themes. And I think that this kind of like Uranus has moved out of it, but now Chiron is coming in. So it's like, what were the things that were brought up by Uranus moving through there? Because a lot was shown to us, because again, these energies, Uranus does not like to be in Taurus. Like these two do not mesh well together at all. And so like, what are the remnants of like what came up that now Chiron is going to be highlighting, right? And again, it's going to be moving back into Aries, but this is giving us a taste of what the themes are going to be when it comes to this. And I think just like on a collective level, right? Like with Uranus having had moved through Taurus, a lot, even like last year, a lot happened just when it came to the food system, right? Like food access, prices went up. Like there's like so much politically. I feel like that happened when it came to those things with Uranus there. Even with like, they were going to stop. I don't know if they did. I don't watch the news, and I like sometimes with astrology, I'm like, I should pay attention to the news just to like see where it correlates, right? But like when Uranus moved back into Taurus, right, they were going to stop like food stamps and things like that for low income families, and I don't, again, I'm not ashamed to say, but like I just don't know what ended up happening with that. I'm not sure if either of you know, like let me know, but like maybe things like that kind of circling around, right, with like this coming back in there. And then on the 30th of the month, Jupiter is moving into Leo, and I don't know, I'm super excited about that. Get out of my 12th house. It's just been like lessons of surrender for the last like year. And as a Leo rising, like just like that kind of like optimism, expansion, like lucky planet kind of moving through my rising sign will be really, I'm curious to see what's going to happen. And then on the 14th, we have the new moon in Gemini, which is happening at 24 degrees in gate 12. Gate 12 is in the throat. This is the gate of caution. And then the full moon on the 29th of June is happening in gate 52. It's at 8 degrees of Capricorn. And so even with that full moon in Capricorn, like we're about to have this full moon in Cancer, right? So it's sort of like this 6-month period, right, where we're like coming in full circle. Or yeah, I guess would it be the new moon in Cancer that's full circle? The full moon in Capricorn would be like full circle, right?
Yeah, full moon in Capricorn
so.
would be.
Okay. I second guessed myself as I said it. I was like, is that right? But so it's like sort of like that full, so you can even look back to like now, right? If you journal, like just like make a note to like kind of revisit what you were manifesting, or like what was happening, what you were kind of like focusing on now as we hit that full moon, the 29th of June. And then the last thing that I have, and I know there are like smaller ones too, but Mercury. So we had that Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Now Mercury is going to enter its shadow phase on June 12th in Cancer. And then it's going to retrograde in Cancer also on June 29th, the day of the full moon. And yeah, so again, you know, Cancer is your inner world, it's your home life, it's your family, your ancestors, you know, and so this is a lot of like your emotional world. So a lot of those themes are really going to be coming up like pretty strongly. Your emotional patterns, like just again, like noticing what is yours from childhood and what's not, right? Like where you were conditioned to believe a certain story, a narrative, like whatever it is that came up for you around those themes. I think that's going to be coming up really strongly. It's just like really repatterning and rewiring for yourself and separating yourself now from the child version that just took everything on to be truth. I think that can come on. And sometimes too, like it's so interesting. I had I can't remember what her title was, but she talked about like past lives on my podcast recently. And it's just so interesting too, because I think that we have a lot of these, sometimes we have like really strong reactions to things, like emotional reactions to things that aren't really rooted in like this lives, like childhood or anything. And I think that sometimes there are like even past life things that it's like when I feel like when you have an emotional response to something so strongly that doesn't make sense to your personal lived experiences, it's definitely tied to a past life. I'm just like such a believer in that too. And so like this, you know, Cancer being also like ancestors, but I also think it can be like past life stuff coming up, right? So just like noting anything I think that comes up around that. can be helpful too.
Yeah, for sure. And in addition to this, we have some really interesting, I guess, like formations that are taking place. So, another one that I am bringing in now is the mystic rectangle. So this is a placement, it's a configuration in a chart. It's basically like a big rectangle that has some square aspects within it. So it's challenge, but it's also balance. And these are really interesting. And if you have this in your natal chart, they're rare. I've only ever come across a couple of people having this in their chart, but it's very similar to like your Uranus energy, where it's like unconventional and like you don't really fit in. You've always kind of been on the outskirts. You maybe feel like an outsider to like groups. You have probably felt some sort of wounding around this. This is, what the mystic rectangle typically represents for people. We have two of these leading up to that full moon in Capricorn at the end of the month. So the first one is on the 22nd. This is the moon in Libra, Venus in Leo, Neptune in Aries, and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So this shows up as an active integration through our awareness. There can be some sensitivity around relationships, a lot of spiritual courage, which I think is interesting because we've kind of revisited that theme of the spiritual warrior multiple times. And then there's also going to be an awareness of power plays that are taking place. So we'll be seeing that. And it's sort of, it feels a little bit like the Emperor's New Clothes, like a little bit like the story, about the tailors who come in and they're making the clothes for the emperor, but the legend of that is that like people who don't believe can't see it. And then he goes out in like the streets of the city in his underwear. If you're not familiar with the story, like that's the gist of it. And so now like we kind of have this moment with this rectangle where it is like that. Like we're going to see people making these plays for power, and it's going to be very obvious to people who are not within that system, right? And it might be at a smaller scale. It might not be at like a world scale. It might be something slightly smaller, or we're just noticing it in communities, or maybe you notice it at your job. But this is going to be like a theme that shows up around this. And then we have another one on the 26th, which involves the moon in Sag, Jupiter in Cancer, Venus in Cancer. Those two are conjunct loosely. Then we have Uranus and Gemini with Mars in Taurus, loosely conjunct, and then Pluto retrograde in Aquarius again. So this is a much more impactful one because we have multiple planets. They are loosely conjunct, and we have one that's like in different signs. So it's a little bit more nuanced here. This says to me it's something about karma. And the reason that I say that is because the configuration that we have here is creating a dynamic of like a threshold that we're crossing. And anytime that you're in those kind of windows, we're looking at karmic release, right? It doesn't necessarily involve Saturn, which is traditionally what we would look to, but there's a lot of other things that are taking place here. So we're looking at authenticity and the evolution of that. And that's this moon placement. It is at 0 degrees of Sagittarius on that day. So, the moon taking on like a whole new identity. So emotional identity. And then this is also a long exhale before we take our next deep breath. So this is a really interesting one. And then of course we have 2 Yods in May, one happening on the 24th, which is at the same time as, just kidding. It's in between these 2 mystic rectangles. So we have the first one on the 22nd, then we have a Yod on the 24th, then we have the second mystic rectangle on the 26th, and we have the second Yod on the 29th. So the end of this month is going to be just jammed with like collective transformation. So the first Yod, we have anchor points of Uranus and Gemini and Neptune and Aries, and then the apex is the moon again. So this is going to be more of the emotional shift, more of the thought patterns, kind of alchemizing and bringing through new breakthroughs. If you avoid this, it's going to get more punctuated each time the Yod shows up, because the Yod involves the moon multiple times this year. So the more that you avoid the emotional intelligence piece, the more you avoid the vulnerability, the more challenging this is going to become. So like, just take that for what it's worth. You can experience this however you want to experience it. We all have free will. But just a reminder that like, this is going to get more and more intense throughout the year. The second Yod is Jupiter in Cancer, Uranus in Gemini with an apex of the moon again. So this is an acceleration of the previous Yod. So bringing in more of that pause, emotional responsibility is showing up. And we also will have this new awareness. And I think it's because of the moon in Capricorn that we cannot proceed the way that we have been. We have to change things. So this is like fascinating to me because it's at the end of June, which is like the midpoint for a year, right? Like we're hitting the midpoint. This is the threshold, and we're going to get to decide how we want to carry through for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And it's the summer solstice too. So this is entering into that season. Yeah, that's really good. I took note of that, those mystic rectangles. I'm gonna keep an eye on those. It's really interesting. Was there anything else you wanted to add for June?
No, that's what I have for June. I can send you my notes too if you want them.
Sure.
I typed them all up there in a Word doc. So I'm so organized.
I'm old school. I still write it all down.
I did. I wrote it all down. And then, of course, I used Chat GPT.
Oh, you did?
I was like, hey, take these notes and make me a document. And it did. And I was like, that's fantastic. But it still messed it up. Like it still caused errors. Like it didn't put the right degrees.
Oh, well, it gives you the format, I guess.
Yeah, it does. That's what I wanted was the formatting, because like my handwriting is not the greatest. And so I was like, I'm not gonna be able to read that. So it was really helpful. I'm just like playing around with like, what's the correct way to use this tool, right?
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Okay, should we jump into July?
Let's jump into July. July's a big one, I feel like.
Yes. So core themes that I have for July are discernment over belief, emotional clarity through specifics, leadership audits. And I love that for us because we desperately need it. Beginnings after refinement, and our values must be functional. So those all sound really cool. I'm kind of excited for July. The shadow of this is going to be certainty, dogmatic opinions, power struggles, authority wounds, spiritual idealization, choosing what sounds good over what actually works. Do you want to jump into the transits?
Sure. So this month, one of the things, there's so much going on. Okay. So the nodes switch signs this month. So on the 26th of July, the North node is going to move into Aquarius. The South node is going to move into Leo, but nodes move backwards. So it's not going to be till the end of it that it hits Pluto. So it goes in at 29 degrees and then it moves backwards. So for everyone with a Leo rising or an Aquarius rising, it'll hit it when it hits it. But so our collective purpose is changing. So that's why this year we had, when was the eclipses? I know I have it in here somewhere because I believe we had, the solar eclipse was in Aquarius. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first one, February 17th, was starting in Aquarius. So usually your eclipses coincide with the nodes. Not usually, the eclipses coincide with the nodes. So we've been having them in Pisces Virgo axis. Now they're starting to dip into this Aquarius Leo axis. And so yeah, that's big. Our collective direction and where we find comfort is going to be switching from that Pisces Virgo. So wherever Aquarius Leo is in your chart, just like make note of that. We have, so that minor triangle that we've been talking about is coming into exactitude during this month. Uranus is going to be exactly trine to Pluto on the 17th of July. And then it's going to be directly sextile to Neptune on the 15th of July. And that's kind of like what creates that formation, right? And then on the 20th of July, Jupiter is going to be trine to Neptune. It's going to be opposite Pluto. So Jupiter is going to be opposite Pluto also on the 20th. And it's going to be sextile. Jupiter is also going to be sextile to Uranus on the 21st. So within those times, like we're really going to be expanding, and Jupiter is now in Leo. So this is about the heart. This is about being, generosity, creativity, dramatics a little bit, right? Because of course, like Leo is the actor on the stage, and there's always a little bit of dramatics within that. So this is really expanding on those themes, brushing on these planets that are really awakening us, transforming us, creating confusion, like all of these themes we've been talking about. So, Jupiter is, considered a lucky planet. It's optimistic. It's the guru planet, all those things. And also it expands on what it touches. So if you're struggling, if you're finding challenging these things, it's going to enhance those as well. So it's not just always like happy-go-lucky, which, it's the ruler of Sagittarius. And there is a theme with Jupiter, though, that Jupiter and Sagittarius, they don't necessarily sit in their emotions. It's on to the next. There's always something like better to focus on, better to do than to sit with it. So notice, like, if something is coming up, are you avoiding sitting with the emotion? Because as we were talking about, it's going to come back if we're not facing it. So if it's enhancing those things and it's feeling uncomfortable, coming back to those practices that we've been implementing, right, for the last like 2 years or whatever, however long it's been, but just like to come and anchor yourself in, regulate yourself, and actually see the thing, right? Because it's going to come up eventually if we're constantly avoiding it. And then Pluto is going to be sextile to Neptune on the 25th of July. So that's kind of like the big themes with that like minor triangle that we were talking about, and Jupiter being a player in that as well. Neptune stations retrograde on July 7th. So it's going to be moving back, but it's not going to go back into air, or it's not going to go back into Pisces. Neptune is officially in Aries for the duration of its time. Mercury is stationing direct on July 23rd. So reflecting on the themes that have come up with Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And then Saturn's going to station retrograde the 26th of July, but same thing. It's not going to go back into Pisces this time. It's staying in Aries for the entire time. So just like noticing what themes are coming up with these planets.
Yeah, that's what I have down as well. There are a couple of new configurations that are showing up here. And I just realized that I described the mystic rectangle as having a square aspect, and that is incorrect. It is an opposition. So it is a rectangle that's formed, and then the corners of the rectangle are in opposition from each other on both sides. So just as a point of clarification there. On the 19th, we have a mystic rectangle involving the moon in Libra, Jupiter in Leo, Neptune in Aries, and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. This is in cardinal and fixed signs. And the thing that's interesting about that is with the moon there, it's kind of creating this emotional sensitivity, but it's here with the purpose of like moving you into your aligned action. So like there is a lot of like forward momentum and then retrograde momentum that's taking place in the coming days after this. So this is really like helping you get clear on what the aligned action is going to look like. Again, we're having this theme of belonging that's showing up as well with this mystic rectangle. And I think some of that is like the Jupiter in Leo, right? Like that being expansive and like on the stage and like in the limelight, really. But also we have Neptune in Aries, which is sort of, there's like an element of disillusionment that's going to show up with that. So it's going to be a really interesting one. I'm super curious to see how that's going to play out. We do have like a lot of heart-centered leadership that's starting to show up here. And I think that, this could be coming from a number of places. Pluto being retrograde, we're definitely going to start questioning the leadership that we have, combined with the Jupiter in Leo, and then some of the other things that are happening this month. So this is an initiation of change, and then the change maintaining the harmony as we continue to move forward. There's a second one that takes place just a couple days later on the 24th. This one is the moon in Sagittarius, the sun in Leo, conjunct Jupiter in Leo. This is a loose conjunction of 4 degrees. And then Uranus in Gemini and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. So this is a collective transformation point. It's rooted in personal truth. In its highest expression, this is a catalyst for a mass awakening. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because we're facing this really weird aspect that kind of makes people outsiders anyway. And also we now have the sun and Jupiter in Leo, right? So this is like amplifying that already really expansive energy, and it's bringing in like our identity to the equation. So we're looking at no longer shrinking to fit into things, which is why I was bringing up that theme earlier, because now as we move into July, we have this catalytic moment where we're no longer going to accept that. So if you continue to accept it beyond this point, it's going to be very uncomfortable, and it's probably going to bring up some emotions for you. There's also no more keeping quiet to keep the peace. And this one I think is fascinating. I'm really excited to see what that brings. It kind of feels like collectively, maybe there are things that we've just put up with because we felt like we didn't have a choice. And now we're moving into a space where like people are no longer going to do that, and we're not going to be quiet about it. Right. So this is a really interesting one. I'm excited to see how people start living their truth in a louder way, because that's what this really says to me. And then we have a Yod from the 12th to the 15th of July. This one involves Neptune in Aries, Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, and the apex is Venus in Virgo. So this is a slow burn, and the future vision and collective transformation that we kicked off earlier in the year, this is going to be more alignment around that and more precision in how we want to be functional, how we want to continue to embody our values. A lot of that is kind of a part of this. With Venus being at the apex, it's asking us to get really clear on the things that we value, really clear on the things that we want to have at the forefront in our lives, and the things that are going to shape how we move from a space of integrity or ethics.
I love that. I got chills. And I like that, you said living truth in a louder way. And I want to double click on the full moon just for a minute, because the full moon on the 29th is in Aquarius. It's in gate 41, and it's going to be playing into this minor triangle. So it's going to be opposite Jupiter in Leo. It's going to be trine Uranus in Gemini. It's going to be sextile to Neptune in Aries. And then it's going to be conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. So this is really amplifying like all of these themes that have been coming up like in a big way. And I think that what you said there, like living your truth in a lot of ways, is because we've now like we've had time to move through like maybe the illusion, because Neptune is the dissolver of boundaries. So it makes it confusing, but then it strips it away. Right. So it's seeing the truth beneath things. And so I know we talk a lot about it being confusion and all that stuff like that, but there is truth held within that. And especially in this gate 25, right? This is love and truth and coming into the heart and things like that. And especially being opposite Jupiter, like this, I feel like this full moon and like this month and this energy, like you said, it's like, it's here. You know what I mean? Like this is, I feel like the like apex of the point of this entire minor triangle that we're talking about. And it's going to start breaking away next year, as in 2027. But yeah, this month is huge. And I think that if we're not living authentically in whatever way that means for us, right? Like we're going to be feeling it for sure.
Did you say that this was in gate 41?
Mm-hmm.
So gate 41 is important to call out here too, because that is the beginning of all of the cycles in like the human design cycle, right? So This is like the initiation point.
Yes.
So that's kind of a big deal too, to have that be showing up in gate 41 and kind of calling us all into this initiation. And then we also have these other, you know, formations that are taking place right around the same time period. It's sort of, it's almost like it's creating all of the pressure to like launch you forward. So like if you think of a slingshot, like if you were to like put a person in the slingshot and then just like pull back, and like throughout the month, there's this progressive stretching that's taking place. And then it's just going to release us. And as we get released, we're going to slingshot like into the future. It's going to be crazy to see how this shows up. And I'm so excited for it. I know that it's going to be scary and it's going to feel intense. And it's going to be a lot. And another thing that I wanted to add was like the more time that we spend with that Neptune energy, the more that truth starts to emerge, right? So like in the beginning, when it shifts, we're like, what the hell is this, right? Because it's so confusing. And then as you sit in that, it's sort of, it acts like meditation in a way that like, as you sit in the sea of like all the voices and all the thoughts and things that come up, it gets quiet. And then we can start to discern like what that base level of truth is. And that's a really exciting thing, to be able to emerge from the chaos with the truth, right?
Mm-hmm. I love the analogy of the slingshot that you're talking about. And I think that can be, you know, applied to sort of like all of this, you know, especially, you know, with 2027 in astrologers and everyone's like, oh, it's a slow change. And, you know, new age Aquarius, like nothing happens overnight. Like it is a slow change. And it is that energy of like being pulled back, and that, but it's still that point of release is jarring to the system, whether you've been preparing for it or not. And
Yeah.
I was listening again to Richard Rudd and Pam Gregory talk, and he was saying, he's like, you know, this new energy of like 2027, like it is going to be instantaneous. It is going to be like a big shift in the moment. And so it's kind of like, I mean, you know, take it for what it is, trust your intuition, use discernment of like what you believe and what you move into. But I do think that, you know, all of this like pressure we've been kind of like feeling, and then whether you're preparing for it or not, like the preparation will allow it to not be like as jarring. But I do think that, yeah, it's definitely going to be felt like regardless.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we're collectively like we're going to feel it at very varying degrees, but we're all going to feel it when the moment happens. And I don't actually feel like the release happens until the end of the year. We just reach like much more, we get much closer to the like extent of the stretch as we get closer to the end of the year. So like it intensifies and intensifies. And if like as a kid or an adult, if you have ever played with a rubber band, when you stretch it just to the point of breaking, right? Like that's what we're talking about here, is like you will literally be stretched to the breaking point and then released. And all of that forward momentum is going to carry you into 2027. So it's a lot going on, and it's just going to get more intense as we continue.
Yeah. And it's fast. I mean, like, you know, we've been talking, I don't know how long we've been talking, but it's just like, it's like thing after thing after thing, right? Like, I mean, it's a really packed year, and a lot of it is in fire sign. So it's going to feel like really fast. So that again, like we talked about, like leaning into the pause and just like not reacting to everything, and like having those practices definitely is really important.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So anything you want to add to July? Or are you ready to jump into August?
I'm ready to go.
All right. So for August, the core themes that we have are root level worth healing. And this has to do with Chiron. We have fated relationships and voice activation, identity resets, node shifts toward authenticity, spiritual release, and sustainability as a part of spirituality. Some of the shadows that show up with this are hiding from visibility, attaching identity to roles, emotional flooding and escapism, perfectionism, burnout from trying to be sustainable without actual support.
Yeah. So, okay, this month, we'll say I'll start with the total. We have a total solar eclipse happening on the 12th of August, and it's happening at 20 degrees of Leo in gate 4. Pam Gregory was saying this is actually the longest eclipse we've had, like in like a century. It's going to be 6 minutes. The actual eclipse is going to be 6 minutes, which is incredibly long. I think she said that it's happening over like Egypt area. So we're not going to be seeing it, I think, in the US. But this is a big one, you know, especially in Leo with obviously the nodes being here now. And so that is something to highlight during this month, just like noticing of like what is happening. And uh you know, we had, was it last year or the year before, we had the big one, and I'm in Texas, and so it was direct here, and everybody was like, I heard everybody outside like screaming and stuff like that, but like I didn't know what to do. I was like, do I go outside, do I stay inside? Like, I don't know. I ended up staying inside and meditating because I was just like, I had done like some reading about like indigenous cultures and like what they believe with the new moon, and I mean, like everybody does their own thing, but it was just like really interesting how like the hype of it and like the energy that you felt, and like every, like literally it happened, and people and my like outside were screaming, and I was like, what is happening? I'm just gonna be in my bubble. But this one being even more, you know, again, it's not being seen in the US, but you know, it is still a big one. And then on the 27th of August, we have a partial lunar eclipse happening in Pisces. So kind of dipping back into that Pisces energy at 4 degrees in gate 55. So again, this gate 55 is really huge for this whole 2027 shift. Gate 41 and gate 55 are like big players in that for the emotional experience. And so just like noticing, you know, themes that are coming up around that. And then let's see that we have Chiron stations retrograde August 3rd. So it's going to go back into Aries next. I think, I don't know if it's in September. We'll get to it, but it's going to end up back in Aries. And then Mercury is out of its shadow phase on August 6th. And then Venus enters the shadow phase on August 31st in Libra. So it's going to end up going into retrograde. And Mercury, there's a Cazimi, you know, with every Mercury retrograde cycle. So that's going to be happening on the 27th. And then Mercury is also going to be square to Uranus. So really enhancing. I think we're actually in, I could be completely wrong, but I feel like we're in a square to Uranus, or we're having one like right now as Mercury is in Capricorn. No, that's not right. Anyway, there's something going on with Mercury and Uranus. I'd have to like check it out. But anyway, that's happening on the 28th of August, and then the sun is also going to be square to Uranus so again, this is just highlighting these shifts in our thought process, like the way that we're thinking, if we're feeling a little bit dysregulated or taken away with our thoughts, right? Like just noticing what's coming up around that. And yeah, I think that's the major ones that I have.
Yeah, the only other major one that I have is the node shift actually takes place on the 18th. So it's just moving us toward a deeper, authentic expression, and then calling us to serve our community. Those are the themes of Leo and Aquarius. So I have that. And then we do have a Yod. This one is a longer one. It's from the 24th to the 28th. And this involves Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries. These are the two anchor points. And then the apex is, I believe it's the Cazimi you were talking about. It's the sun, the moon, Mercury, all at 1 degree of Virgo, and Venus will join them in this. So it's a really intense one, because we have 3 to 4 planets all at the apex point of this Yod. So if you think about like the archetype of the planets, we have the sun, the moon, Mercury, and then Venus for a moment. That kind of gives you the theme of what this is going to be. This is a lot about future vision, collective power shifts, the human system. So the nervous system is going to be something that comes up from this point until the end of the year. Like it's being continually activated. And I love the way that you described it earlier as like Uranus sort of being like that lightning bolt. This to me is like a signal that we're moving into a space of feeling. The feeling for this for me is like lightning in a jar. Like we've trapped it in a jar and it just is erratic and it's bouncing all over the place, and it wants something to ground it out, right? So this is where like your grounding practice is going to be really important, especially from the end of August until the end of the year, because we continually will be revisiting a lot of these placements and themes. And it's sort of like we're just slowly turning up the volume on all of it as we come closer to the end of the year. The Apex being a stellium in Virgo is driving home simplicity and functionality. So looking at the systems that you're establishing throughout the year, making sure that those are sustainable as you move forward, making sure that they're functional, because if they're not functional, you're not going to keep using them. And this is the point where sustainability becomes a part of your spiritual practice. So all of those things kind of coming together with this Yod is closing off, and like it's the bookend for the end of August, which feels like it's sort of one thing after the other, right? We do have there is a near mystic rectangle. I think it's only off by like 2 degrees. It is interesting. That's happening from the 8th to the 14th. It involves a lot of like slower moving planets. Like we have like Venus and the vertex are conjunct at one point. Mercury is the other point. And then we have Neptune and Pluto as the other 2 points of this. So some of it is a slower moving, but this is also why it's not an actual mystic rectangle that takes shape here. But there is some kind of interesting themes around that. Just like paying attention to, this is where like destiny is going to meet consciousness. So pay attention to that time period, the 8th to the 14th of August. See what shows up around there. It might be nothing and it might be something. Like I can't really tell because it's not an actual mystic rectangle, but it is interesting if nothing else. So that's everything that I have for August. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we'll roll into September. We have core themes of inner innovation, habit repatterning, shadow authority exposure, courage and innocence, relationship truth tests, and the mind rewiring around desire and power. And the shadows that come along with that are control, moralizing ambition, the fear of loss driving our values, a rupture from suppressed truth, and either or polarization, and nervous system overwhelm. So this is where nervous system overwhelm really starts showing up predominantly, I would say. Do you want to go through transits for this one?
Sure. I have to say, I love what you said. Mind rewiring around desire and power. I love that. That gave me chills. Okay, so this month, the major ones that I am seeing, so Chiron is going to go back into Aries. Chiron went in Taurus, went retrograde. Now it's going back into Aries. So whatever themes were coming up around Chiron and Aries, just like taking note of like what's resurfacing now. The new moon on September 10th is in Virgo, is happening in gate 47, and then the full moon September 26th in Aries is gate 25. So this is in conjunction with Neptune. So those themes are coming up. And because it's conjunct Neptune, it is in this minor triangle, again, highlighting those themes. So it's going to be sextile to Uranus and sextile to Pluto. So that like, again, power, like you said, desire and power, like literally these 2 things, like power, transformation, truth, shock, all these things are going to be coming up and being really highlighted in this specific full moon. Uranus stations retrograde on September 10th. And then Neptune and Pluto are going to be an exact sextile again because they're both retrograde now, like kind of moving backwards on the 15th of September. So again, these themes we've been talking about are really being highlighted here. Maybe not as intensely as July was when they were all in this like exact configuration, but these themes are really going to be coming up again. So it's like, what came up for you back then? What, especially with Jupiter, what did you face? What were you just like, on to the next? I don't want to sit with this, right? Like, so what's coming back up? What did you work through? Just like kind of like reflecting, I think, on those themes. So like if you have a journaling practice, which I really encourage anybody have a journaling practice, I love just like being able to like look back and just see like, and that's a beautiful thing about astrology. I find as somebody who has a journaling practice, when I'm looking at all of these transits that specifically touch on my own transits, right, or my own like natal chart, being able to look back, like I can't remember which one it was, but there was something that was happening that had already touched, and I like went to look, and literally the same themes like exactly were coming back up again. So I think that can be a theme here. It's like, what did you not face, or what still needs to be moved through? And like
Yeah. So one thing that I want to add here is that on the 14th, we have Lilith moving into Capricorn. And this is really interesting because it also is part of that power dynamic, right? And we're also going to be looking at that, what did I say? I'm trying to remember. The rewiring around desire and power. So if you don't know what Lilith represents, this is the black moon Lilith in birth charts. If you're not familiar with it, it represents how all of the things that get suppressed in us. It's power. It's how we challenge things. It's where we want to rebel. It's the types of things that usually activate really deep emotional things for people. And you can look at where this is in your chart and kind of see how this shows up. But collectively, when this moves into Capricorn, we're going to be experiencing a new initiation around power, authority, survival, and sovereignty. And I really think that with everything else that's going on this year, this is so potent and appropriate timing because we're revisiting a lot of these things. And as we sit more with that Neptune being, in Aries, we're going to start to see the truth from the lies. The discernment will become more clear. And then now we have Lilith kind of joining into that power dynamic, giving us new clarity around responsibility, things that have been controlled, things that have been suppressed and like hidden from us. How we moralize things is going to come up and be revisited. We're also going to be looking at worth and ambition because this is in Capricorn. And remember, like as above, so below, and as within, so without. Everything that we do on the inside reflects in our external reality. Don't be surprised if things start getting exposed publicly and showing up in the media around this. If we start seeing a lot of things about things that have been hidden from us or things that maybe have been half-truths or all-out lies, like these things are going to start showing up. Lilith has a tendency to sort of like dig to the bottom. It feels a lot like Scorpio energy to me. It's like digging into the bottom, like, okay, well, what else is hiding here? Like we have to clear it all out. And this is a collective purging of things so that we can move forward educated and from a place of sovereignty. Like that's a really great word for this transit. So that one's interesting. It's going to bring up themes around toxic authority, and we're going to be revisiting the hustle and grind culture and how we do or do not want to continue to engage with that. I'm going to say like we're probably going to move away from it just because I know like the themes of 2027 are really learning how to operate in a completely different way, right? Like this is what we've learned about human design, and then also the age of Aquarius, like coming full swing and moving into that place. So those are some of the things showing up around there. This is definitely going to bring up some shadow work around control and possibly self-discipline. And then we have 2 Yods that show up in September. From the 15th to the 18th is the first one. This is Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries, and the apex is Venus and Scorpio. And within this, there will be a double one that shows up on the 17th. It's a brief one, but it will be there. And it kind of creates like a closed circuit of energy. It's really interesting. The first one from the 15th to the 18th, this is going to be bringing in our future and it reshaping how we think and who we think we are. So the identity is going to be a big part of this. And then our values, because the apex again is Venus, right? But it's Venus and Scorpio this time. So it has a totally different flavor to it. And we're going to be looking at like a lot of shadow in how we operate. What is the underlying current of the values? Are we operating from a place of integrity? Are these values actually aligned with us? There's also going to be a lot of depth and honesty, a lot of emotional integrity coming up here. This is a really profound and honest transformation that will allow us to recalibrate to be able to survive the new reality that's shaping. So it's a big deal. and it's a slow burn. Again, we have like 3 days where this is happening. And then the double one that shows up on the 17th, it's there for, I don't know how long. I didn't look at how long this one would be, but it's kind of quick compared to the other one. It's right in the middle. So this one is the one that I mentioned before, which is Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries with the apex of Venus. And the second one is Venus in Scorpio, Lilith in Capricorn, and then the apex of Uranus in Gemini. So this one, like I said, it's one closed energetic circuit. The future cannot advance until the desire and power dynamics have been transformed. So that's what this is here to do, is to fix that. And then again, recalibrate humanity as a whole, so that as we move into the new way of being and the new future, we are able to do that in a way that is clean, and we're not bringing all of, dragging all this garbage behind us and like not working through all of that stuff. So again, if you haven't done your inner work, you're kind of not going to have a choice at this point. So I would just encourage you, like, start dabbling in that now because like whenever you're listening to this, whatever that is, please start doing that work, because you will feel this. We're all going to feel this. It's a big transit, and it can be kind of explosive. There is some dynamics here within this that are like power struggles. They are pointing to leadership, and it's a collective rewiring. You will have to feel this. So just please start doing that work so that you don't have to feel it on like a really intense level. Make it easier for yourself, right?
Yeah. And on that note, we have an air trine, grand air trine. Well, it's a kite configuration actually at the end of the month, 25, 26, 28, like that time, where the sun in Libra is going to be opposite to Neptune and Aries. The sun in Libra is also going to be trine to Pluto and Uranus, and they're sextile to each other. So again, like playing into this configuration, but again, like what has to do with your mind, and with it being air signs, it's not just your mind, right? It's being social, it's community, it's the collective, it's like all those themes as well. And of course, the sun is like shining a light on all of this. So it's kind of like the spotlight happening on top of like everything that you talked about. So yeah, I was giggling when you were saying that. It's just like, yeah, like don't wait until now. Like this is what we kind of have said. Like if you're listening to this, in January or February or whatever, like just choose now to start, because it will support you in the long run. And I don't know, I think sometimes too it's like like the journey of like being aware and deepening my spirituality, sometimes it's easier to be in ignorance, right? But then I'm also like, I would so much rather be in awareness and it be challenging, but like it's also so beautiful and it's so powerful, right? And I think this is what we're moving towards. And I do think that there will be a split, right, in our timelines, like some people will choose fear and to follow blindly and all the things, and some people will choose love and faith and all the cliche stuff. But I do think that we will be living there will be two separate worlds on this world at that point, right? It's like, which one are you going to be choosing to go towards? And this is just a big theme of that. And I think that I don't know, like with 2026, I've been saying it's kind of like this energy of like timeline jumping a little bit, because it's like all of this energy, right? It's like, which one are you going to move towards? And perspective is everything. And with all this stuff and air signs and and all that and fire signs, it's like we're initiating, but we're also just shifting the way that we view things and choosing. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. As I was looking for like through all my notes and preparing for this, I was like, at what point can I tap out? Like, can I phone home and have them beam me up?
I know, right? Well, and this is too, like, I have decided there's only 4 astrologers that I'm going to consume information for, like moving forward, because, like during 2025, I follow so many people on social media. And like you said, like you've maybe gotten off social media. I mean, I love social media, but also like we can consume so much. And I was like, oh, it's going to be so fast. It's going to be so exciting. Yeah, it is those things, but man, it's also really intense. So like choosing who you're consuming, and even with like the idea of like authenticity and coming closer to yourself, like I have to I'm trying to be so clear and focused in like my own direction, my own path, connecting with myself and my intuition, that if I'm listening to like everybody, it's like, I don't know if it's like my open G center, but I'm like, I know that there's truth in everything because everybody's speaking from their own truth, but it doesn't have to be my truth. Right. And so it's like, I've just like, yeah, I've narrowed it down to the 4 people that I fully resonate with, that I feel the truth of what they say, not just like intellectually, but in my body, I feel the resonance. And so when I listen to them speak, it is a little bit more heavier. They're like, 2026 is still gonna be challenging, and I think that when we're in this whole like pop astrology fluff, right, on social media, that can be, which is appealing if you're first getting into it, but for the depth that like I crave, it's like, yeah, there's more to it than just, it's exciting because everything's moving into fire signs. Woo. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's kind of like a reductionist way to look at it, right? And I don't think that anybody comes to astrology that like doesn't want depth. So, I mean, like, obviously engage at the level that you feel comfortable, but there are some people that I'm the same way. I only follow, I think, like 3 people that I'm like, I trust like the update coming from you. And I trust it because they're honest. That's the biggest thing to me. It's like when you're telling me, oh, it's going to be so exciting and like so fun. I'm like, I literally don't have fire in my chart. That does not sound fun to me. I have like one fire sign and it's my Mercury, and like everything else it's like water and earth. I'm like, that sounds really uncomfortable. And like, guess what? It was really uncomfortable. So this year I feel like I'm not here to like make somebody feel scared. I don't want anybody to go into it with fear, because I think that that's how we get here, right? Like that's how we end up in these situations with systems that don't work, is that we're operating from fear. And one thing that keeps coming up through all of this is like we're revisiting scarcity constantly throughout 2026. We're going to be bumping up against it, scarcity of resources, scarcity of, food and financial and like all of the things. And I think people need to know that. Like, you need to know that going into it. It's important to be honest and to tell you what's happening so that you can prepare and like adjust as needed and like proceed through it accordingly, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and to just kind of double click on something you said too, like anybody listening to this, like these are collective themes, right? Like this is like what's happening on a big scale or like big picture, but like your individual chart makes such a difference. Like Sheena, you have no fire. I have so much fire. So I'm like, I love the fire train. Like I'm on it, right? So like the way that we're going to experience it is so different, especially as a Leo rising, right? Like all these things. So like take it for a grain of salt in the sense that like your own chart, like you might have Pluto on your IC right now. That's, so like there's so many different nuances. Of course, like if you want more like in depth of like how it impacts you, like, yeah, find a great teacher that'll be able to like apply this to you. But these are collective themes. So it's going to look different for everybody as an individual. Like I could not have planned how intensely Mercury retrograde, this past one, was going to impact me. Like maybe I could have if I had sat with it longer, but I just kind of glossed over it and like whatever. And then when it actually happened, it was like it rocked my world, So yeah, I think like all of these are like big picture things, but we're all going to feel it a little bit differently, and nobody's right or wrong for it. But again, it's coming into your own authenticity and your own self and honoring your experience versus like what you think that you should be experiencing because somebody else said it. You know, like that's I think where we need to be.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. All right. Are you ready to jump into October?
Ready for October.
Okay. Buckle up. Because from October to December is there's a lot. So October, we have core themes of deep relational review, leadership with grace, moral velocity, secrets and truth telling, stability through care, identity transformation, and accountability under pressure. The shadow that comes along with these is obsession, manipulation, reactivity, rush decisions, performative intensity, hiding motivation, and power plays that backfire. So remember how we were talking about that Yod and how like we're recalibrating to move into the future. Beyond that point, if we start to see these power play dynamics, they're all going to backfire because they're not coming from a place of integrity. And this is the thing, like moving forward, this is why I keep saying like, please do the work. Because if you don't, this is going to be a really, really difficult transit. Do you want to cover the transits for October?
Sure. So other than the sun moving into Scorpio, which I feel like is always, I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with Scorpio. It's so intense, but like I love it. Like, but anyway, so that switches, which I think always brings an intensity to like the end of October, November time frame, like in the big scheme of things. And you said like deep relational review. Was that the word you used? Review? Yeah, I think so. I scribbled it. So deep relational review. So Venus is going retrograde on October 3rd. And so of course Venus is relationships, it's our values, it's our self-worth, it's the material, it's like all of these things. And Venus in Scorpio, Venus doesn't like to be in Scorpio because Venus rules Taurus. So there's an element of discomfort there. I am a huge fan of Venus in Scorpio, but maybe I'm just the weirdo that loves the intensity of things like that. But it can be really intense when we're looking at that. And so again, retrogrades are bringing this energy inward. So where a Scorpio in your chart, what's going on in that area, like what's coming up. And again, I think that I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to say it again so much that people are going to be so sick of me saying it, but like your values, like getting so clear on it between now and then, because like when Venus goes retrograde, we might be questioning them. We might be revising them. We might be revisiting them, but it's like that saying, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything. And like, that is a theme of like this year too. And so like really getting clear on that, and just like as Venus moves through here, like your relationships are going to come into play, your finances are going to come into play, like all of this stuff is going to come up, and it's not going to be light and playful energy. Like this is Scorpio goes deep, like this is getting down to the core of things. There's also a lack of trust in Scorpio, right? Like that's one of the big things of Scorpio, is learning to trust in this life. If you have prominent Scorpio energy, that's a huge theme of you. Just like a little side note, it's funny, but was just like, my son is a Scorpio rising and he's got Mars on his ascendant. So we were talking like, I don't know, like maybe a month ago, and he was like, I can't trust people. I was like, why can't you trust people? It's like, well, I told my friend something and they told everybody, like, and I will never trust anyone again. And I'm like, whoa, calm down. But like, that's the energy of Scorpio. It's like one person does them wrong and it's like all bets are off. I will never trust anyone ever again in my life. Right. And so it's like, that is the intensity of that energy, right? So again, Venus being retrograde in Scorpio is probably going to be pretty intense. And then simultaneously, on the 4th of October, Mercury starts its shadow phase, moving into a retrograde in Scorpio again. So fun. That's, whatever came up this past Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, which was like when did it go? I can't remember when it went direct, but it was in November. Really notice the themes, because those are likely going to be coming back up again. So what were the patterns that came up? What were the mental things? Like, just if you journal, flip back, see what came up, because those things might be coming back again. Pluto's going to station direct on the 15th at 3 degrees of Aquarius. And then Mercury officially retrogrades in Scorpio on the 24th. So that'll be interesting. And then as far as our moons, so we have our new moon October 10th in Libra. That's going to be in gate 57. And then our full moon is happening in Taurus on October 25th at 11 p.m. I always like when it has those little angel numbers. And that's going to be in gate 27. And the full moon is going to be square to Pluto. And so that's definitely going to bring some depth and intensity to all that energy. And then Mars is going to be squared to Venus retrograde, which, like I said, I think back in January, because we have this little conjunction stellium with Venus, Mars, and the sun right now as we're recording this. But anyway, anything with like Mars and Venus is always going to bring up themes of, just attraction, sexuality, magnetism, relationships, sort of the masculine, feminine. But with Venus retrograde, it might be a little bit intense. It could be whatever's coming up. And then Venus retrograde in Scorpio is going to be square to Pluto, the ruler of Scorpio. So it's going to be all kinds of intense.
Yeah. In addition to that, on the 14th, we have a grand trine in fire. So this feels like the cauldron and like the fire getting turned up underneath the cauldron. Like we're cooking this community soup and we're just like moving into the last moment of like the boiling point, right? So this is made up of the moon in Sagittarius, Mars in Leo, and Saturn in Aries. So this is going to feel a little bit like a collective time warp. So you need to make sure you check in with yourself. Don't do anything too hasty. It's going to feel easy to move fast and be reactive because of all this fire. This is a major opportunity for things to go sideways. So please don't do anything quickly. Like, take your time. This also carries a really heavy moral element. Things are going to flow a lot more easily when you're in alignment with them. So this is one time that I would say, like, take your hands off the wheel and just coast for a minute. Just coast for a minute. Let this time period pass, because whatever is aligned for you and meant to happen is going to come together. You're not going to have to force it. You're not going to have to take like major action. And if you allow it to show up instead of forcing it, the potential for things to go sideways is a lot less. And then at the end of the month, we have 3 Yods. I promise I'm not
have to call out
be...
Crystal's face just then was like, more. There's more.
Just wait.
I'm not saying much, but my face says it all.
Yeah. Just wait. It gets better. I'm just waiting to cover December, to be honest with you. This is like December is going to be like the launch pad. So in October, from the 17th to the 20th, we have 1 Yod. From the 24th to the 27th, we have another one. And then on the 30th, we have a 3rd one. So the first one is Neptune in Aries and Uranus in Gemini with an apex of Venus and Scorpio again. This is the one that keeps repeating throughout the year, right? We've visited this one. This is just like moments of getting more and more clear on what you need to change and how you want to move forward. What do you actually want? And this one's going to be asking you, what are you afraid to lose if you admit what you actually want? So we had this, recalibration and revisitation of Lilith moving into Capricorn in the previous Yods last month. And so now as you move into this one, like it's asking you to claim what it is that you actually desire and revisit those fears. Like, why are those fears keeping you where you are? This is going to be I feel like this is going to be intense, especially because it's like 3 days that this is going to be sitting with us. So it's a really good opportunity to get clear on that. This is, like I said before, this is the repeating Yod that shows up multiple times throughout the year. The second one is also 3 days long, and it's made up of Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, and the Sun in Scorpio. So a slight shift with our activation point. This is asking us to become someone new as we move forward. So taking all of the things that you desire in your life and then becoming the person who gets to realize those. There's a big shift here. So we're asking, like, who are you when there is nothing left to hide behind? So if you haven't done your work, again, you're going to feel this, because this is like the sun showing up at the apex point. This is shining a light on all the things that you're trying not to deal with. And this, you'll have no choice at this point but to deal with them. The future requires a new version of you, not just a higher performing version. So it's not going to be something that you can work your way around. It's not going to be something that you can compete your way out of. You have to feel it. Your identity is going to have to match your truth, or it will collapse. So that's kind of what this one is bringing us. And then that last one on the 30th is Saturn in Aries, Uranus in Gemini with an apex of the Sun in Scorpio. And this is a karmic one because we have Saturn as an anchor point. So this is pulling in the flavor of the two that we've already kind of experienced in the days prior to this. This is like a culmination point. So this window is not going to be able to be resolved by waiting it out. You can't rebel your way out of it. Like, this is literally pushing you into your path. So, let it happen. Let it take you where it's meant to take you. Try to surrender if you can. Try not to fight against it. It's just going to make things a lot more uncomfortable if you're not allowing this change to take place. It's here with a purpose, right? So that's everything that I have for October. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, what you said, I got goosebumps. It was like, what are you afraid to lose if you actually admit to what you want? That was so powerful. And I think that's a question we can ask ourselves, like, at any point in the year, but like, I know it's like being highlighted here. I also just wanted to add to that Venus retrogrades in Scorpio on October 3rd, but then October 25th, it goes back into Libra. So it's not going to be in Scorpio the entire time. It does go back to Libra. And Venus is the ruler of Libra. So it's more at home here. But I think that a theme that comes up with this, so like Libra is justice, it's balance, it's harmony, it's peace, it's all those things. It can be really people pleasing in that. But one thing that like I love about Libra is that, and especially because we know that, I mean, we're all creative, right? And I think that we forget that sometimes, right? We think that we're not creative, but we're all creative. And I think most of our creativity comes from these really intense points. Like, I know for me, I'm most creative when I'm coming out of a low. And so the thing with Libra is that Venus ruling Libra is more like refined, whereas Venus ruling Taurus, I feel like, is raw. It's sensual. It's like the wild woman kind of energy. Venus ruling Libra is more refined, it's more sociable, but it's sort of the energy of like the artist, because it's aesthetics, it's art. It's like I'm creating art from whatever that pain was that I felt to create a movement where other people are going to take action for it, right? So it's kind of just like throwing it out there and letting other people grab hold and start something, because like Libra is a little bit too people pleasy to be like the forerunner of that. So it's sort of like, but there's beauty in that too, right? It's like all the beautiful sculptures and paintings and all these movements that created from art, that artist, right? Like that's that Libra energy. It's like I'm taking everything I've been through, all my pain, all my suffering, all my struggle, everything I've learned, and I'm putting it into this piece of art, whatever it is, whether it's writing or painting or photography, whatever. And then I'm putting it out there. And then I'm letting everyone else kind of like, create that movement, but it is sparked by that energy. And so I just wanted to kind of like add that on, like, if you're like using this energy and whatever's coming through to create something, I think can be really beautiful.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's kind of what Venus in Scorpio feels like to me, is like pulling all of the deep dark muck that we carry around, all of our shame and our things that we try to hide and all of that. Like it's pulling it all to the surface and like cleaning it out. And then like, how do we create something new with all of the things that get removed from that? Because that's how like transformation works, right? Like you don't get to just pull it up and delete it. We have to make something from it. So this is like a really potent time to be able to create something incredible. So like leverage that, like lean into it and allow that to be something that carries you through these periods that feel really stressful. Like it's stressful on your nervous system. It's really hard on the mind. And like now, like our identity is a part of this all throughout the year of 2026. We're all going to be feeling this to some degree. So like leverage that and use it to create something new. There's so many outlets, like you said, like you can write, you can paint, you can make something, like there's so many things that you could be doing. I mean, even the podcast, like podcasting is a form of creativity. And so like, even if you just need to talk it out, like whatever that is, but like, let's use that collectively and transform it so that it doesn't settle back in the system.
Yes, perfectly said. All right, ready to move to November? Is there anything else that we want to add into October?
No, that's it for October. So, okay. Rolling into November, we have core themes of authentic rebirth. So that one's pretty fun. I don't know if I'll feel fun about it when it happens, but right now it sounds great. Enduring agreements, present moment truth shift, sovereignty in change, and body-based sustainability. The shadows that come along with that are evasiveness, cutting off hard conversations, mental spirals, urgency without capacity, burnout, projection, and pretending that the old system is still working. All right, so for transits, Rochelle, what do you have?
Okay, so the new moon is happening in Scorpio on November 9th, and that's in gate 1. And gate 1 is just like it's creation, but it's the masculine version. Like we have gate 1 and gate 2 in human design. Gate 2 is the feminine, which ultimately really it's you know, everything is birthed out of the feminine, but gate 1 is like the movement portion of it. It's the masculine part of creativity. So that's happening then. And then we have November 24th, our full moon is happening in gate 20. And if you remember from all the way in the beginning, Uranus moves into gate 20. So this is conjunct Uranus. This full moon, again, it's going to be in that little minor triangle aspect. So it's going to be square to Mars, but it's going to be conjunct Uranus, sextile Neptune, and trine to Pluto. So again, really bringing up these themes, which, as we've seen a few moons now, are playing into this. So really highlighting and illuminating. And it's like, what are we releasing? Like you said, authentic rebirth. Like that's all like a part of this, which I think is really powerful. We have Mercury stations direct on the 13th of November at 5 degrees of Scorpio. Venus stations direct again, also, or not again, but also on the 13th of November. So on the same day, they're both stationing direct at 20 degrees of Libra. And then on the 30th of November, Mercury leaves its retrograde period. And then on the 5th of November, Mars starts its Mars starts its shadow phase of its retrograde, which will happen in 2027. So Mars is interesting because most other planet, like, you know, Mercury goes retrograde 3 to 4 times a year. Venus typically goes retrograde every year. Mars only goes retrograde every 2 years. So when Mars retrogrades happen, they're a little bit different in nature. So we had a Mars retrograde at the beginning of 2025, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. We're not going to have it retrograde in 2026, but it's going to start that shadow phase on the 5th of November, and then it's going to retrograde in the beginning of 2027. So we'll be noticing kind of, you know, even to like most, you know, between November and December, as far as Mars is concerned, really paying attention to the themes that come up, because as it goes retrograde, those are what's going to be coming up more strongly. And then those are the main ones that I have. On the 11th of November, Jupiter is going to be opposite to the North Node in Aquarius. The 29th, Uranus is in a direct trine again to Pluto. So again, highlighting that, like I said, it's not going to be like it was like all in exactitude in July. This is just, you know, that, but it's still tightly, you know, this configuration is still tightly happening, but that's going to be in exactitude on the 29th. And then, yeah, the sun moves into Sagittarius, Mars moves into Virgo. I think those are the major ones that I have.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the 13th when Mercury and Venus both move direct. Both of them moving direct at the same time is kind of rare. Like that doesn't happen super often. Granted, they are in different signs. So Mercury is moving direct in Scorpio in gate 28, which is the gate of struggle. And then Venus is moving direct in Libra in gate 32, which is continuity. And I think that the combination of this is pretty potent. Mercury is demanding us to be honest in our communication about meanings, risks, and purpose. And then Venus is moving relationships and values into what will endure the test of time. So in human design, gate 32 being continuity, this is the gate that tells us, like, if you have this gate, you know when a dream is meant to be made into reality. And Venus stationing here means like our relationships are kind of taking on that same flavor. They're taking on like what is meant to hold the test of time and continue throughout the rest of life, right? Mercury is an investigation and communication around truth seeking. That's going to come up a lot. This is going to be really uncompromising, and it's meant to get to the core of what actually matters to us as human beings. It's meant to do that. So try not to shy away from that when it shows up. I know that like that can be kind of, it can feel invasive sometimes if that shows up, or it can feel maybe like uncomfortable, but vulnerability here is going to play a really major part in how relationships get transformed and are able to carry forward. Venus is going to bring a lot of focus to our agreements, fairness, and our social harmony. And that's kind of what's going to be showing up there. This is all kinds of relationships. This could be like direct romantic relationships. It could be family dynamics. It could be group dynamics, your friend groups, society, your workplace, like wherever you're in like a large connection to humans, this is what is going to be a theme throughout that period of time. We also have another mystic rectangle on the 28th. This is made up of the sun in Sagittarius, the moon in Leo, Uranus in Gemini, and Pluto retrograde in Aquarius. And this is asking us to evolve truth without losing our internal coherence, which is really interesting because we've kind of talked about this over and over again. The word coherence really can be applied throughout most of the transits that we've talked about, but this is going to feel a little bit like whiplash because it's asking us to evaluate how we communicate truth and not just what is believed. So what it like communicating from your heart, like what is actually true, who you are, like having that expression come from your core instead of like tapering it or watering it down so that it's believable. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Then we also have 3 Yods at the end of November. November 3rd is our first one. It's not the end of November. So the first one is Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries, and the moon in Virgo. So again, the moon is the apex point. This is non-negotiable change at this point. Our human systems are going to be upgraded in a way, like we're regulating, we're getting really clear on our values. We're going to get really, really good at getting like dialing in discernment around all of that at this point, like as we get through all of the energies that we're experiencing throughout the year. When we reach November, we're going to be in a place where we're well cared for. We have grounding practices, you know, we're doing the things that we need to be able to sort of take care of that lightning in a jar, right? So we're going to be also revisiting some of the themes from August, because if you remember back in August, we had a Yod that had very similar flavor to this. This is our emotional reality, and we're going to be bringing that emotional reality into our embodied life. So again, we have, you know, the emotional world being like fully integrated into the human experience and in our bodies and how we operate day to day. It's also a practical recalibration. Sustainability is going to start in the body. So this is why it shows up earlier in the spiritual practice. A lot of times we go through upgrades and changes in our spiritual practice before they hit like the physical body. And this is where that integration point kind of begins, is at the beginning of November. So then from the 9th and the 17th, we have Saturn in Aries, Uranus in Gemini, and an apex of Mercury in Scorpio. Like it kind of dances around a little bit, and then it returns to this Yod placement again. So this one's putting pressure on how we make decisions, because we have Mercury as the apex point. It's in Scorpio. So this is going to be like digging to the bottom, trying to get clarity. We really want like mental liberation with this. And the merging of our innovative thinking and our accountable actions are also a part of this, because we have Uranus and Gemini as part of it, and then Saturn and Aries. So look to those 2 anchor points as a way of balancing out this Mercury and Scorpio, because it doesn't really seem like it's super comfortable there. I think you kind of talked to that earlier, Rochelle. Mercury and Scorpio is kind of it's an interesting dynamic to experience if you don't have it in your natal chart. So we're going to be naming truth, and that's going to cause power shifts. So this is a big one. And then at the end of the month, from November 21st through the 4th of December, this is a long one. We have Pluto retrograde in Aquarius and Neptune in Aries as the anchor points for this one. Then we have an apex of Mars in Virgo. This is somatics. It's all about the body. And it's going to have consequences if you don't integrate. So how we take action has to change from this point forward. The system that you think you're living in isn't real, and it's no longer going to cut it for you. Like you're going to be at this is the threshold, right? Like we're approaching that. This is the doorway where you take the step into the new way of living. So this has themes of burnout. There's a lot of urgency around this, You're going to feel pressure to take action. Again, like this is a place where you want to just kind of sit with whatever's coming up for you, be present with it. This is a theme that's shown up over and over throughout the year. Projections at this point through the end of the year are going to be really high. So don't take anything personal. You just have to like get really, really solid with yourself and sit with yourself and go through whatever this transit is bringing you. Because throughout the month of December, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Like we're going to be revisiting this over and over again. Like this Yod is going to bounce around a whole bunch. And if you don't get clear on it at the end of November, December is going to be a really hard month.
Yeah, like we said, don't take anything personal. Have you read the Four Agreements? I think most people have. But yeah, that's what I always like to remind myself. Take nothing personally, assume nothing, do your best, be impeccable with your word, right? And especially with Mercury and Scorpio, I think it's really important. Whatever your internal experiences is not to like bypass it or avoid it, but whatever your internal experiences, you can control how you bring that to life. You know, you can control what you say because our words are really powerful. So I like that one. I also want to just like kind of double click and go back to like the beginning. So like November 11th, the Jupiter is going to be opposite the North Node, which means it's conjunct the South Node. It's also going, the South Node is going to be conjunct, the North Node is going to be opposite Mars, which means Mars and Jupiter and the South Node are in a little stellium in Leo. And then the Sun on the 17th is going to be square to the North Node. It's going to be square to Jupiter, and it's going to be square to Mars. So just like highlighting a lot of these collective themes that are happening with that node, with the nodal axis in Aquarius and Leo. So like, where are you coming from your heart? Where are you integrating in your community? Where are you doing things differently? Where are you being heart-led? Like all of these themes that we've kind of been talking about, I think are going to be really highlighted. And with Mars there, it's like wanting us to like, because this is fire and fire, right? We want to like move forward. We want to do something about this energy. And of course, Mars always holds a theme of like frustration too. So it's like, are you maybe feeling frustrated in the sense of, because it's conjunct the South Node, right? So when you're feeling that pull to like the comforts of what you're used to, you know, are you feeling more frustrated because Mars is there and Jupiter's expanding it all, right? So that's another big thing that's happening in November.
Okay, anything before we roll into December? Put like a nice little cherry on top of this beautiful cake.
Oh man, you guys weren't kidding. 2026. It'll be interesting. All right, what happens in December? Just lay it on me.
Okay. Core themes are embodied philosophy, disciplined conviction, spiritual integrity, belonging without extremes, the final lock click of action and responsibility. And the shadows that come with this are overcommitment, survival mode productivity, compulsive control, fear of loss attachment, nervous system collapse from pushing through, and spiritual performance instead of integrity. All right, Rochelle, go for it.
I feel like I want to let you take this one. I don't know, because you've been
okay.
Like,
yeah. It's my birth month. I'll take it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. So on the 8th, we have a new moon at 16 degrees of Sagittarius. This is in gate 5. This is patterns. This is the last new moon of the year. And I feel like it's important to punctuate that because we're refining our belief systems and our future direction at this point. We're looking at it and saying, like, what is the collective pattern, right? What is the rhythm that we live our lives to? And how are we going to like integrate us individually into the new rhythm that has been established throughout the year? So this one's really interesting. One thing that I love that came through on this is freedom comes from honoring our natural rhythm, not from forcing our personal speed of life. And this is important because I'm a manifesting generator and I like to go fast. So I need this reminder. And if you also need this reminder, here you go. Then on the 10th, we have Saturn moving direct in Aries. This is happening again in gate 17 of opinions. This is important because Saturn here is, it's bringing us a collective lesson around responsibility, authority, and long-term efforts that now move into the space of applying to our lives. So which convictions are you willing to stand behind and give discipline to? I love the phrase that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And if you're not putting 100% into something, you're not putting 100% into anything, right? We can't do 3 things at 100%. We can only do them at a marginal percentage because we're trying to do all of them. So this is asking you to get really clear on what are the things that you want to move forward with into the next year. It's kind of a pivot point from questioning actions to acting with understanding. So this is a really interesting one. A reminder that opinions gain power when they remain open to evolution and refinement. Opinions are not meant to be like a hill that you're willing to die on. It's meant to be open. Like open discourse is a big deal. We talk about it a lot on our podcast, that we need to be able to have free flowing conversation and then be open to having your mind changed by someone else who's bringing you new information, right? The mark of a really good leader is someone who's willing to admit that they're wrong. And how often do they do it? And then when they do it, can they apologize? That's like a tricky one, right? Like and this is something I think we're going to see emerge pretty predominantly throughout 2026. On the 12th, Neptune will station direct in Aries. This is in gate 25. So again, we're revisiting that self-love envelope, right? Like we're coming into our own spirit. This is in the heart center. So I feel like it's a very heart-centered transit. Jupiter also stations retrograde in Leo in gate 29, which is perseverance. So Neptune moving direct is kind of like our first visible steps into our new spiritual cycle. This is it carries a lot of the theme of innocence and courage. So think of like the Fool in the tarot again, like taking those steps, sort of unaware of all of the challenges and repercussions and things that might lay ahead, and doing this in a way that carries a frequency of joy. That's a really big part of it. Jupiter moving into retrograde. This is a review of faith, what gives life meaning and our collective direction. So this is a really interesting one as well. And I think that it's interesting because these are happening at the same time, right? Like those 2 changes are happening on the same day. So together they're kind of creating like a checkpoint for our own spiritual integrity. And we get to revise that from this point forward. So that's really cool. On the 23rd, we have a full moon in Cancer. This is in gate 15, which is the gate of extremes. This, we have spent so much time like pendulum swinging back and forth in between the extremes of all the things, right? Even over the last few years, we've had these themes coming up as we've had these outer planets station retrograde and then go direct, and we're revisiting and coming back and forth. And this is sort of where the gap of that starts to narrow. So that swing is not quite so drastic. This is going to be unique to the individual. And it can bring a lot of emotions because in Cancer, we always see themes of like, it's a water sign. This is going to bring up intuition, but it's also going to bring up things that are tied to the moon. It could bring up your home life. It could bring up, like, look at where this is in your chart and you'll be able to glean a little bit more information about how this might impact you. But we're going to see a lot of that coming up with this one. And this is kind of closing out the year. So we start out December in this major Yod, right? And then on the 5th, we transition into a completely different one. So that's fun because it's a double. So now we've moved into this double Yod. So if you remember, the first one is Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, Neptune in Aries with an apex of Mars in Virgo. On the 5th, we're adding in another one, which is Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini with an apex of the moon, and Venus in Scorpio. So they're going to be sitting right next to each other. So this is going to be an emotional one. It's another closed energetic system, just like the one that we saw in September. This is the obsolescence of old power structures. And it's a quiet dismantling of the old collective system. And I think this is so fascinating because it's right at the end of this year that carries so much intensity, that carries so much, revisiting and revision and discernment and all of those themes that we've talked about. And we're coming up to this like really nice little bookend. We will collectively be ending performative efforts. Knowledge discovered throughout the year will not be unknowable. So everything that we go through, it's kind of like you were just saying, Rochelle, it's funny that you said this like just a minute ago, but like being aware of what's happening and being awake to it. And now like there's no more closing your eyes. We're all going to be collectively aware. So like we've kind of seen waves of this throughout the last few years of like the awakening process, right? Like there's a wave of people that kind of awaken to things. And then the next year we have another wave. And now like this is the final wave. And this is going to be the clear division, like you were talking about earlier, where people will take the direction that they're taking. And those versions of reality are going to be remarkably different. So no more some survival mode after this. This is a system collapse. It's bringing on more of the body limits. We're going to be paying attention to our emotional truths and then getting back into action. Then from the 7th to the 9th, we transition into the second one that showed up on the 5th. This is Neptune in Aries, Uranus in Gemini with the apex of Moon and Venus in Scorpio. This is the emotional crucible. This is the, it's designed to land in your heart and bring clarity to your attachments and values. And it's here to 100% surrender. It's like that last final moment of surrender, right? There's no amount of thinking or theory that can help you get out of this. You have to feel it. So watch for grief themes to show up here. Desire will be a part of this, attachment, power dynamics, sudden insight, shocking realizations, and faith before form. So this is like your intuition showing you things and you holding on to what the intuitive hit was and then seeing the form come to life later. Then on the 10th, we have another one. This is the Moon in Capricorn, Venus in Scorpio, and an apex of Uranus and Gemini, which is really interesting because this is how we think. And it's how we think about responsibilities, attachments, and desire. So again, we're revisiting that similar theme to Lilith moving into Capricorn, but a slightly different flavor because this is in Gemini. This is the point of no return, essentially. We can't turn back from here. We're calibrating toward the new way of thinking that will require emotional honesty and clarity, even if it costs you your comfort. On the 11th, we have one that's Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, Saturn in Aries, and the apex of Mars in Virgo. This is a similar one to the one on the 10th, but it has a harder edge and it has more consequences to it because Saturn is involved. This is about what gets done, how it gets done, and what the cost is. If your actions are not tempered, mature, and sustainable, it will break the system and prevent your body from functioning. This is so interesting that like this is like a recalibration point at the end of the year that like you literally don't have a choice but to surrender to this, allow it to do what it needs to do. And then it says effort without intelligence is no longer tolerated. So we have to act from wisdom and integrity from this point forward. And again, like I said before, I'm not here to like scare anybody. I just want you guys to be aware, like this is what's happening in space. Take it or leave it, right? If you leave it, like you're probably going to feel this a little bit more intensely, but we all have free will and you're allowed to choose what you want. Okay, so there's another one from the 12th to the 17th of December. This is Venus in Scorpio and Mars in Virgo with an apex of Saturn. this is karma. Like 100%, the apex of Saturn and Aries. This is, what are you willing to take responsibility for? It's asking you take radical responsibility. This is a commitment and leadership that has to be chosen by the collective. So this is coming back to what you said earlier about all of us bringing our own unique essence to this thing. And then we will appoint whoever is meant to lead the group forward. If you say yes to this as a leader, you have to mean it and be willing to carry the weight. This is what Saturn is asking for. On the 14th, we have a double Yod that shows up in the middle of all of this. And this is the final one that will continue for 24 hours. It is taking the previous one, which was Venus in Scorpio, Mars in Virgo, with an apex of Saturn and Aries. And we're adding in the previous one that we've seen a couple of times, which is Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, Saturn in Aries, and apex of Mars in Virgo. This is the lock click of everything clicking into place, because we've been through the revisions, the changes, the challenges, the refiner's fire, in a sense, like all throughout the year of 2026. Everything's going to fall into place at this point. And if you've done the work that was required for you to step fully into the leadership led by authenticity and taking responsibility, this is not going to be a difficult one. This is a closed circuit again, and it's a compression of your desires, your efforts, and your responsibility. So this is really looking at your single decisive moment where like your commitments and your working patterns are all going to just kind of fall into alignment, like where they need to be. And then we'll carry out the rest of the year from the place of that first Yod, which is the commitment under pressure. So you'll have a moment where everything clicks together, and then you'll finish out the year with that commitment under pressure. And then on the 17th, that kind of closes up, and we move through the last like 2.5 weeks of 2026 with a little bit of clarity, I would like to think, after all of that. So that's what I have for December. I know that's a lot. Rochelle, feel free to sprinkle in whatever you have.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in the beginning, you started with one of the keywords being disciplined conviction, and something that's coming up now, maybe it's because it's, we're just about to hit the new year, but I think that it's applicable all throughout the year, like really any point in time. But like, I learned a big lesson on discipline this year, right? I think that with Saturn moving through Pisces, or just kind of the Pisces energy that we've had with the nodes, it's, being, an entrepreneur or whatever capacity you're applying it to, we are all about like the flow and this, like life happening and things like that. But discipline is required. And I think that when we're trying to like manifest things, or we're trying to change our life, like we're not going to get to point B by doing the same things that were in point A, right? Like we have to have the discipline to like, whether it's like you get up in the morning and you know that you need to go to the gym. Well, I can negotiate and talk myself out of going in 1,000 different ways, but it's not going to get me to where I want to go. Right. So like, if you're cool with like the way everything is, like, yeah, amazing. Right. But I think that we want to say like discipline doesn't matter. We want to like have, argue our way out of that conversation, but it's so important to be disciplined, right? Because it's going to be the thing that's going to move the needle. And it's the thing that's uncomfortable, and the ego is going to fight you at every step of the way. Like I just decided this week, I'm like, you know what? I'm not waiting until after New Year to start the things that I want to start now. Like I'm just going to do it. Right. And my ego so hard was like, no, just wait until after the new year. Like you want to eat this, or you want to drink that, or like, you don't have to go to the gym tomorrow. Right. And it's like, there are in some ways that like, like today I didn't get to the gym, and I'm probably not going to go now, but it's totally fine. Right. Like having compassion for myself, but know that like, I'm not waiting until a certain point in the future to like start those things. And I think that if we're wrapping this all up in December, like what things can you start now? Like not wait until New Year's, not wait until April, not wait until after the wedding you have in May, like whatever it is, right? Like what things can you start now so that when we get to this point in December, like you're talking about, like we are so like, we're there. We've already like put in the hard work kind of. And not to say that everything's going to be easy, but like if you create the discipline and the habits and the routines and the structures now, it's going to be so much easier to fall into that and to like show up in that way, and to like, that big question of like, what would my higher self do in these moments? Like act as if that person, and acting as if requires discipline, because that person that you want to be does the thing that you're negotiating yourself out of doing right now. Right. So I think that just when you brought that up, like that's kind of really what came to mind. It's like, but of course there's always a balance. Like, yeah, surrender is required, like surrender to the universe. Cause it's like, if I'm trying to go by like my mind and the way that I think that everything should happen, I'm going to miss everything that's for me. Right. So it's like, we have to be open to, and I think that's like the delicate balance that we play. It's like being disciplined and being structured and all those things, but also allowing for the beauty that's really circling you to come in. And so I think like that dance is so fun, right? As we're like all trying to navigate it. But I think it's really important conversation to have, because, yeah, it's required. And it's really easy for the ego to convince us out of that. The other interesting thing that I thought, with the new moon being in gate 5 and the full moon being in gate 15, in human design, those create a channel, right? So these are kind of like bouncing off of each other in a way. It's like two ends of this energetic channel in human design. It's the G center and the sacral center. So it's combining the two of those. So this is like the heart and your sacral, your intuition, I guess, or your life force energy, your workforce energy, all that stuff. So that's interesting. And then with Jupiter stationing retrograde in gate 29 on the same day. So it's kind of like they're moving in opposite directions here, right? Like Neptune stationing direct, Jupiter is stationing retrograde. Neptune is in gate 25 for the entire of the year. We've talked about gate 25. Gate 29, I'm a little obsessed with, because my unconscious earth is in gate 29. But like, just to kind of like add to the conversation earlier, we were talking about the theme of Jupiter stationing retrograde. Gate 29 is the gate of commitment. It's the gate of yes, right? So it's like, in my personal life, I know like I've said yes to so many things that weren't actually yes, just like people please or like get out of it, right? So it's like, make sure that during this time, the things that you're saying yes to, you are saying yes to because it's a yes, not because you want to make somebody happy, not because like if there's any pause or hesitation, or if it doesn't feel like a yes, like don't say yes to it, right? Like coming inside and being authentic and truly heart-led, because it's like, we can people please all day, but people pleasing at the end of the day is a form of control. And so we need to come from the heart. And it's hard to have those conversations. It's hard to say no to someone that you care about, you want to make happy, and like all those things. But when you're saying no to someone else, you're actually saying yes to yourself, right? So just like keeping that in mind as Jupiter, because Jupiter's expansion, right? It's going to highlight all those things. So if you say yes to something just to say yes, right? Because that is the shadow of this gate. It'll say yes to everything, right? It'll commit to everything, but then it doesn't have the staying power, the energy, because it doesn't actually want to invest in any of the things that it said yes to. It's going to be really highlighted in this. So really just, yeah, paying attention to that. And there's a lot of squares this month, a lot of them, with Mercury square the North Node, square Jupiter. It's Mars a square Uranus, Mercury is square Mars. I mean, it's just like this whole big dance of like a whole bunch of squares throughout the entire month. And so again, with squares, they're challenges, but they're offering us an opportunity to do something about them and to, move forward. And so with everything that we talked about, with everything that Sheena said, I think this is a really beautiful opportunity. It's not going to be an easy month, and depending on the work you've done or where you're at and what you're moving through, and what maybe these retrogrades with Venus and Mercury brought up for you. But it is a clearing opportunity, almost is like the word that kind of came to me, because if like you're moving through it, if you're doing the work, if you've done the discipline, if you're able to regulate, if you've put those things into practice throughout the whole rest of this year, I just think you're better able to navigate it and really learn the lessons of it. And you know what, if you're listening to this in December of 2026 and you feel all chaotic, again, like I said it earlier, and I truly believe like we're all exactly where we need to be learning what we need to be learning. And so if you're feeling like you're still choosing comfort over discomfort of change and all those things, like don't shame yourself. It's fine, right? There's always like another opportunity. And that's the thing, like the universe is going to give you lessons in different ways. If you don't learn the lesson, none of it's wrong. It just is what it is. You will continue to repeat those lessons until you're sick of your own shit. And hopefully this year is going to get you tired of that so you can actually move forward. But if not, there's going to be another opportunity and another point in time. And so, it is what it is. And this year is full of opportunities to move forward. And so are you taking them?
I love that. Some of the key words throughout this entire discussion I wrote down is community, refinement, clarity and values, presence, mindfulness, change of old themes and patterns, awareness, surrender, grief, and integrity for 2026. Is there anything else I missed?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much encapsulates it. And we just will, I mean, the episode that comes after this is going to be like about the numbers for the year and like tarot card and all of that. But I learned something new yesterday and I wanted to share it. So the year that we're moving into is a year of 1, but it's also a year of 10. And the reason that this is different is that a year of 10 is co-creation. The 1 represents the self, and the 0 represents the universe or God or whatever you want to call it. And you're in co-creation with that. So yes, there are new beginnings that are starting, but you're also going to be creating something new. And we've seen that in all of the themes throughout all of the transits in astrology for 2026. This is also the year of the fire horse in Chinese astrology, which is momentum without breaks. It feels like the chariot a little bit to me in reading about it. This only happens every 60 years. So the last time that this happened would have been 60 years ago, which is crazy. That would have been 1966. Did I math right? I think so. Anyway, it brings social upheaval, rebellion against authority, ideological shifts, charismatic but destabilizing leadership, and radical redefinitions of power and autonomy. So that's really interesting. And I think that that applies to a lot of the things that we've already talked about. So any other closing thoughts before we wrap up? Thank you, Rochelle, for staying with us for so long. This is the longest podcast.
Thank you.
No, I love it though. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get this out there.
Yeah, it'll be good. Again, like none of this is said to scare anybody, just to encourage you to like continue to do that deeper excavation of the self. Make sure that you're coming into your integrity, leading from an aligned place. We want to see everybody thrive. Like we want to see everybody succeed. And this year you're going to have tons of opportunities to do that. So each time that you take that opportunity, just know like you are choosing a better future. And that's a really great choice. So on that note, thanks for joining us, for sticking around. Rochelle, thanks for being a part of this. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.